record evidence. Give me a second here and enjoy this, and I'll be back in a sec.
All right, 1:30 this afternoon. Call came out, shots fired. That was called in by the Secret Service. Because we're in constant contact with them all the time, we were notified of that, and we had units here that immediately sealed off the area. Fortunately, we were able to locate a witness that came to us and said, hey, I saw the guy running out of the bushes. He jumped into a black Nissan, and I took a picture of the vehicle and the tag, which was great. So we had that information. Our real-time crime center put it out to the license plate readers. And we were able to get a hit on that vehicle on I-95 as it was headed into Martin County. We got a hold of Martin County Sheriff's Office, alerted them, and they spotted the vehicle and pulled it over and detained the guy. After that, we took the the witness that witnessed the incident, flew him up there, and he identified as the person that he saw running out of the bushes that jumped into the car. Now, in the bushes where this guy was is an AK-47 style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks which were hung on the fence that had ceramic tile in them, and a GoPro, which he was going to take pictures of. So those are being processed right now. The Secret Service agent that was on the course did a fantastic job. What they do is they have an agent that jumps one hole ahead of time to where the president was at. And he was able to spot this rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engage that individual, at which time the individual took off. So that's what we know about the investigation. We have somebody in custody right now that is a potential suspect. We got a little bit more work to do on it, but as we usually do, as soon as we decide that we're going to book him into the county jail and the charges that he's going to be booked into, we'll get those to you and we'll get a picture of him and we'll get you his background. So now I'm going to turn it over to the representative of the Secret Service, and he's going to make a brief statement.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I first want to thank all of our law enforcement partners, to include the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office and the Martin County Sheriff's Office, for their involvement today. Former President Donald Trump is safe and unharmed following a protective incident shortly before 2 p.m. on Sunday at Trump International Golf Club at West Palm Beach. The U.S. Secret Service personnel opened fire on a gunman located near the property line, and this matter is under investigation. I'll turn it over to my partners over at the FBI.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Veltri. I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI's Miami Field Office.
FBI, Miami Field Office.
The FBI has assumed the role as the lead federal law
right
enforcement agency in the investigation of the incident that occurred earlier today at Trump International Golf Course here in West Palm Beach, Florida. We've deployed a number of resources, including investigative teams, crisis response team members, bomb technicians, and evidence response team members as well. What we need right now is for the public to avoid the area around the golf course. We will continue to support this investigation with the full resources of the FBI, alongside our partners with the United States Secret Service and the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, as well as Martin County Sheriff's Office and state and local law enforcement. I would ask that if anyone has any information that may assist with this investigation, to contact our tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI or at tips, that's T-I-P-S,
something tells me they already knew who this guy was.
FBI.gov. Thank you.
In the good mic. We're on the good mic now.
Hi, I'm Dave Ehrenberg, State Attorney for Palm Beach County. I want to thank Sheriff Bradshaw and our partners at the local, state, and federal levels. I'm here because our prosecutors are currently working up warrants and a motion for pretrial detention for the suspect. In that way, he will be kept in custody. But our filing of these warrants and charges at the state level does not preclude federal charges that could be coming. But in the meantime, it looks like the the warrants and the pretrial detention motion will happen first. And again, I want to thank the cooperation we've had with our federal partners and at the local
I can
level.
stop it. I just wanted to make sure that we're live
thank you all
across
for being here
all
today.
platforms.
Okay, we're going to make these pictures available to you. It'll show you a picture of the backpack and the rifle. And there's also a
Okay, well, we'll give
GoPro
them a
on the
call.
fence there where he was intent on filming what was going on. Even though we're going to have to secure
Okay,
a couple of areas
Everything
around.
is good.
the
I'm not sure I'll be able to
golf
keep
course
up with the chat or the
Public
or the-
doesn't need to panic. We know that we got a post office,
Super
a
chat.
library, and a
Let's
school
let's
down
pause
the
this
street.
here.
So
I'll
we'll
keep
make
it up
it
on the
convenient
backdrop.
for you to get to all the places you need to go.
So what else is going on this lazy Sunday afternoon, everybody? Holy sweet merciful hell. I'm watching the news like everybody else. I've been sort of cramming and trying to get all the details out before coming to any conclusions. You know, the fog of war is heavy, but we've gotten, at the very least, they learned from the first attempted assassination to come out and give some details, before rumors start spreading and before it starts looking like they are neglecting giving public statements on yet a second assassination attempt. Hey, they impeached him once. What's another one? Impeach him a second time. Well, hey, look, in this week's assassination attempt, it is absolutely outrageous. I'll cover the facts in as much as we know them right now. The shooter has the attempted assassin or the would-be assassin has been identified. I got independent confirmation from someone I trust who I won't name unless the person wants me to name them, but got confirmation that the individual's name is Ryan Ruth. It was reported by Gator Gar and a bunch of other people. It's been reported in the media right now that the individual's name is Ryan Ruth or Routh. I don't know how you pronounce it. I was a little late because I'm scrolling through Ryan's Twitter feed to just screen record as we go through it, because this is all going to, it's an amazing thing. We still don't know, by and large what was on Crook's Twitter feed, who he was contacting. They do sometimes a lot of scrubbing, a lot of damage control, a lot of verification before releasing the name so that the internet cannot get it all done on their own. The internet looks like it's gotten ahead of this one. And again, I bit the tip of my tongue again. The internet seems to have gotten ahead on this one and is going to preserve all of the evidence in as much as it's still possible. So, I was just flipping through the individual's Twitter feed, screen recording, and then screen grabbing tweets of interest. Let's just look at this. By the way, I'm calling it now. There's not a chance. There's not a snowball's chance in hell that this individual was not known or on some form of radar. In as much as AI, algorithmic learning, can function, do anything useful, it would be tracking down people or keeping track of people whose Twitter feed consists of fighting with Ukraine. Oh, by the way, I got a bunch there. Interestingly enough, you want to know what news sources this guy was tagging? PBS, CNN. Did I get that one in here? Secretary Blinken, I am in Kyiv and wish we could loan all of the Patriot system in Poland to Ukraine and accept the MiG jets from Poland, return all the nuclear weapons we removed from here. This only ends when Putin is dead and Moscow flattened. End this madness forever. Then you got him tagging POTUS and Zelensky. Here we got CBS News. I'm flying to Ukraine to stand for peace. What was the one down here? I don't know who that other person is. Did I put in 4 or 3 of these? We got PBS. I would like to see more coverage on average citizens' thoughts on the war. Secretary Blinken. Kamala Harris. You and Biden should visit the injured people in the hospital from the Trump rally and attend the funeral of the murdered firemen. Trump will never do anything for them. Show the world what compassion and humanity is all about. Posting his telephone number. Joe Biden, you should visit the victims of the hospital of the Trump rally victims and attend the funeral of the firemen that died. Trump certainly never would. Oh, no, set aside. Well, I'm not going to have a discussion with someone who's quite clearly mentally unwell. There is not a question in my mind. I don't know how things work. I just know that if they got a list of 2,800 influencers who are Russian propagandists, this guy's on a list. This guy was on a list, and I'm curious to know when they come out and say he was known to authorities. So this is what the latest is of the, I'm just reading the chat here and trying to keep up with it, but this is what the latest is as of this now second assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. I brought up a timeline in a tweet earlier here. Let me see if I can find this. I think this is it, coming from Lucas Tomlinson. Yeah, here we go. All right, Palm Beach County Sheriff. 1:30 p.m. today, first reports of shots fired by Secret Service outside Trump International Golf Club. Units sealed off area. Suspect jumped out of the bushes into a black Nissan. Witnesses reported the car and license plate to police. He was found, at least on the location. AK-47 with a scope, 2 backpacks, and a GoPro camera were recovered. I'm not sure. I think that was at the site because apparently in the backpacks also were ceramic tiles, which I'm to understand was intended to set up something of a protective barrier so that when Trump came to what was the 5th hole of the golf course, this guy could at least buy some time if they fire back on him, because I guess the ceramic tiles would provide some shield from return gunfire. FBI is leading the investigation. I was listening to Benny Johnson before we went live, and he had somebody by the name of Prince on, who's former Secret Service, something along those lines, and I retweeted it because I think it's important to retweet, that DeSantis and state authority should take control of this. This is not my thought. This is his thought, and it's a very, very accurate and insightful one. And we don't trust the FBI. We don't trust the Secret Service. This is now the second assassination attempt in 3 months. He would have been, it says here, the Trump safe after the second assassination attempt since July 13th. July, August, September. 2 months. 2 months. Second assassination attempt in as many months. Trump was 300 to 500 yards away from the shooter at the time they engaged with him. What I understand happening here is that the shooter, let me see if I got the aerial of the golf course. Yeah, I don't even know if I do, but I'm not. Yeah, I do. Here, it's like I don't want to show it because then you give other stupid people or crazy people ideas. But New York Post, already posted this here. So apparently, you can access where the individual was found, which was, I believe, on the 5th hole. And there's one of those Florida, not irrigation canals, but those water canals. And apparently there's no fence around the golf course, no wall. And you could access this portion where the guy was setting up against a fence simply from the road. Walk along the tree line, apparently, and you can set up right on the fence. And apparently he would have been 150 yards from Trump when Trump came to that portion of the hole, of the golf course. And he was spotted because the Trump team or the Secret Service was doing a one hole ahead type sweep, saw apparently a barrel sticking out of the trees, engaged, and then the man took off on foot, was subsequently arrested, and has been identified. Looks like a bat plop crazy lunatic who listens to CNN, PBS. Let me see what the other things that I had to bring up were, because it's actually astonishing. This is Carol Markowitz. Pick of the man in custody after the attempt on Donald Trump. The man is 58 years old. I don't have a name yet. Carol, I believe, was one of the earlier ones to get it because, if I'm not mistaken, New York Post and Fox News. And I think Fox News was the first ones to confirm, or among the first. I don't know. It's confirmed the dude's name is Ryan Ruth, and now the social media is going to be Ryan Wesley Ruth is the attempted shooter. Finboy, so someone says the ceramic tiles are cheap bulletproof. The poor man's bulletproof protection. And this is an image. I mean, we're all operating with information that's breaking as we speak. This is what apparently the setup was. The rifle. This is the rifle. It's a pixelated image. This is the rifle. These are the two plates of the backpacks that had ceramic tiles in it that would have given some sort of protection. And by the time the would-be assassin would have had a clear shot, he would have been within 150 yards of the president, which I've don't have much experience when it comes to that type of stuff, but according to many is a very, very close range, obviously, for that type of stuff. Now, I do want to highlight some stuff, which we will never forgive and we will never forget. Y'all remember Vindman, the traitor who played the pivotal role in, was it Trump impeachment number 1? Yeah, it was Trump impeachment number 1. Vindman. I'll tell you this, so there's never going to be any confusion. People call me a pussy Canadian and a little, a number of other names which are not flattering in terms of my propensity to remind everyone to never resort to violence. And people like, Viva, you're never going to whatever, and blah, blah, blah. There's a time when you resort to violence and it's proximity of threat. In these cases, and I say it over and over again, and I'll say it until I'm blue in the face, you resort to threats and you resort to violence, and then you allow the victimizers to claim victimhood, like what they're doing in Ohio now. Oh, someone phoned in a bomb threat. We're the big victims on all of this, not the 58,000 residents of Ohio who have seen their town turned upside down. Who was the other one? Oh, Eric Swalwell gets death threats, and now I'm the big bad victim. Woe is me. Don't do it. Period. Full stop. It is counterproductive. It is Fed-ish behavior, and it will yield the exact opposite results that you want it to yield, presumably. And so I will go out and always say anybody who's out there promoting violence, saying go threaten people or doing it, are feds or Fed adjacent, because they are counterproductive to the very movement allegedly that they want to be supporting, period. So I'm bringing this up not so that people can go threaten and harass and whatever, although you put something like this on the internet and you're going to get a bunch of people very, very angry with you. This is Vindman's wife, I believe, who immediately after the failed assassination attempt put out, "No ears were harmed. Carry on with your Sunday afternoon." And then in response to that said, "Sorry, you're triggered. Laughy face, laughy face, laughy face emoji. I mean, no, I'm not. I don't care a little bit." Can you, this is the, let me just make sure. I think it's Rachel Vindman wife. I think it's the wife of Alexander Vindman. Yeah, Alexander Vindman. The traitor who tried to get Trump impeached the first time around. Coming out the hour after a second failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump, making a joke, no ears were harmed. By the way, you know, she's ostensibly suggesting here that the first one was something of a setup, a fake. You know, he cut his own ear like WWE. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not. I don't give a one little bugger all that I am now mocking and minimizing the second assassination attempt on the man who I don't know how in a fair universe does not become the next president, the president again in November, mocking it. Well, I'm not. I don't care one little bit. And then this woman will come out on Twitter in an hour tomorrow saying, "I'm getting all sorts of mean threats in my inbox," after I mock what would be, the guy had a GoPro, by the way. The guy had a GoPro, right? Mocking what was probably intended to be the live stream execution of Donald Trump a second time because they didn't get it the first time. The man had a GoPro, the shooter, ceramic plates, a gun, accessed that place through the fence, through the walk around thing, and was presumably going to live stream it, much like, I don't remember if anybody, well, I mean, I don't know who remembers this. You will. The Christchurch massacre in New Zealand, where the guy did it live streaming with a GoPro. Oh, no, laughy face. I'm sorry I triggered all of you. I'm not sorry one bit, sons of bitches. No, it's all fun and games. But if I get mean messages, I'm going to go call the cops. I'm getting threatened. I'm the victim. And I screen grab that because that shall live in infamy. That's one. That's one person who, had the good. I mean, can you imagine what it takes by way of idiocy to do that? Now, I'll give a little benefit of the doubt to Hakeem Jeffries. Maybe he didn't know what had just happened when he put out the tweet that he put out. But Hakeem Jeffries, who spent the last 2 years talking about extreme MAGA Republicans, threat to democracy, existential threat, extreme MAGA Republicans. Let me pull this one up. Where's the Hakeem Jeffries one? Here it is. Yeah, checky. No, just Hakeem Jeffries. Maybe he didn't know what had happened by the time he did this. Extreme MAGA Republicans are the party of a national abortion ban and Trump's Project 2025. We must stop them. This was at 3:30. This was 2 hours after the failed assassination attempt. This number 2. Hakeem Jeffries tweets out, "We must stop them." Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he's in government and he didn't know what had just happened. And so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He didn't know. Although I didn't know that he had actually tweeted that after the assassination attempt. I thought that was just one of his thousands. You go Google Hakeem Jeffries, extreme MAGA Republicans, and it's psychotic. It's actually unhinged and deranged. the amount of tweets that Hakeem Jeffries gets out there and puts out with extreme MAGA Republicans. Holy hell. And then just we'll do one more because we're going to get, I'm going to see Barnes, I'm going to bring him in, and I got to do the sponsor before we get too far into this. Do one more just because it's fantastic. Oh, Vice President Kamala Harris. She's so diplomatic. She's always, she's thinking about democracy and the threat to democracy. I have been briefed on reports of gunshots fired near former President Trump and his property in Florida, and I am glad he is safe. Violence has no place in America. That's a very interesting way. When she describes that, she knew it was a failed assassination attempt. This was being reported at the same time that some outlets were saying, oh, it was gunfire between two people unrelated to Trump, and your lefty idiot morons out there ran with that. I saw both of those reports, and I just waited a little bit because I don't know what's going on. You wait for the details to come. And she knew damn well. She knew damn well, and she drafted that in a way that will let her idiot, psychopathic, lunatic sycophants come to the conclusion that, this wasn't an assassination attempt. It was just gunshots fired near former President Trump and his property, near his property. No, it wasn't someone setting up a scope on the fifth hole of the golf course to execute and live stream the execution of Donald Trump. No. Some gunshots. I've been briefed. Violence has no place in America. Not even political violence. Violence has no place in America. I'm glad he's safe. Oh yeah, this is coming from the party that says Democrats say Trump is an existential threat. They're not acting like it. Oh, they're acting like that, Vox. Seems like another bunch of psychopaths have listened to what Vox has to say. So what do we know? We know the man's name. We know that his Twitter feed was filled with Ukrainians supporting stuff. He's going to Ukraine, wants to fight with them. He watched CNN. PBS was reaching out to... He had a couple where he tagged Trump back in the day, telling Biden to go visit the Joey Camperatores. He wants the party that literally just tried to facilitate the assassination of Trump to go visit the family of the people who got shot and killed as a result of their attempts to kill Donald Trump. Yeah, Tom McDonald said it in a song. They'll kill you and then they'll make it the news. Holy hell, can we get any more of a direct example than that? Yep. They're going to go, the party that just tried to kill Trump is now going to go to the victims of their failed assassination. And yes, I am largely lumping the party into this. Because when you go around for 2 years calling someone an existential threat, he's going to strip women of their rights. They're going to be dying by the thousands. He's worse than Hitler. When you do that, you know damn well what you're doing. And the Secret Service, which is under Merrick Garland, try to impeach him, try to convict him, try to bankrupt him, try to jail him, and then you try to kill him. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm lumping the party into that. I'm lumping the party. I'm lumping Jen Psaki into that. I'm lumping Dan Goldman into that. I'm lumping Hakeem Jeffries into that. I'm lumping in Rachel Maddow, Bernie Sanders. They are all complicit in this. Oh, and then they tamp down rhetoric. Do you think this is going to make Trump? The man just got, now it's second assassination attempt. And the media's coming out and blaming him. Oh, it's because he said, I hate Taylor Swift. What did he think would happen? Murderous psychopaths is what they are. Speaking of, I'll get into the questions afterwards. But, speaking of the government being up to no good, people. I guess it's apropos. Listen up, people. It's not a coincidence that we're seeing a surge of health crises just as critical decisions need to be made. First, a massive COVID-19 spike with 2 million new cases. World Health Organization declares monkeypox a thing now. We're gearing up for a bird flu summit right before an election. They're not coincidences. They're calculated moves to keep us in fear and control. And now we're seeing the second assassination attempt in 2 months. Ask yourselves, were you prepared the last time when we went full fascism? Shocking 48% of Americans don't have any emergency supplies ready. According to the National Center for Disease Preparedness, we saw how medical and pharmaceutical industries failed us last time. They left us to fend for ourselves. Do you really want to count on them again? Do you want to try to count on this government to take care of you? This government, to quote the guy from the movie there, the House of Cards, this government is the terror. It's time to take control. Get your contagion emergency kit from the Wellness Company. It's packed with ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pack, quiet part, I'm doing something, budesonide, Tamiflu, and a nebulizer, the treatments they didn't want you to have the first time around. Forget waiting in line and struggling to find a doctor to prescribe these life-saving medications. Just a few clips. The kit is yours, ready for when you need it, and you don't have to rely on a doctor or go to a hospital. Don't let yourself be caught off guard again. Act now. Prepare your family for the next pandemic. Be proactive. Be prepared. Get your emergency contagion kit today. twc.health/Viva. To get your emergency kit, promo code VIVA for $30 off at checkout. TWC Tango Whiskey Charlie.health/Viva. Promo code VIVA. The kits are only available in America. Sorry, Canucks. Hold on one second. I'm going to kick the dog out of here. Go. Get out. Go. Out. All right. Sweet, merciful goodness. Let me get this out here. Now, let me go to the as much as I can and bring these up before we get too bogged down. We got they're on the top now, so I've got to maximize my screen. They've changed the layout so that the comments don't go over our faces when we're on the bottom. I think we need to start a new term for what the Democrats are trying to establish: a murderocracy, a system of government where they murder their political opponents, mock them with the truth. Then we got that was from Awazawa. Then we got, my parents are having friends over for dinner, and I went up earlier and heard my idiot father going on about how Trump is a horribly right-wing. This is just, we're living through insanity here. Barnes, Swift's endorsement is meaningless. Didn't help Bredesen against Blackburn. Also, Pizzagate, hush hush maybe. Let's see here. See if we got any more news here. And I heard another of them going on about how Trump was lying about what was going on in Ohio with the eating of animals. They're freaking brainwashed. It's unbelievable. Boomer Truth. Let me see here. T1990. I want to try to get to some other ones just so that I can get everybody here at least. If you look at his X post, it appears he's quite connected to Ukraine. You know who else is? Rachel Vindman's husband. Good. That is a good. Well, you could go through and see if he's tagged or if they've had any correspondence on Twitter. I mean, this is where the internet is gonna sleuth this out, sniff this out real fast and better than the Secret Service and the FBI can. I've noticed some of these eat the cat TikTok memes aren't catching on as much as they could. They should start melodic and slow and then quicker beat, focus on the dance moves. Dude, it's picked up. It's picked up enough, I think. Holy crap apples. We're going to talk about that tonight, but I think we're going to have to talk about this a little bit. Sorry, I got that one. If you look at his X posts. Aaron Nuclear. Let's just hope we stay with the first half of your name and not the second. Last night's movie was had an applicable quote, like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target. Don't jinx. Don't tempt fate either. In the deep stupid, is the deep state stupid enough to try a second time? Is this the guy running the U.S. deep state? That's from Ithaca 37 Cato. Now, who do we got here? It doesn't bring up the images. There was Simple Jack in there from Tropic Thunder. Then we got Alien Baby says, you got some new fans. I'm docking my boat. Have the live stream going, and they want me to turn it up. Who do we got? Booyah. I see a lot of people on the dock right there. That's fantastic. Let's see here. Vindman is a traitor, says DM. Let me just make sure that I'm not going to get into any trouble here because I don't want to be accused of even indirectly promoting violence. No. And I know some of you don't like it. Too bad. You have to live with it. Vindman is a traitor. While in uniform, he leaked information of national security importance, spun for impeachment purposes. He is now running a victim of Trump campaign in the Virginia 7th for Congress. Let me see here in the Virginia 7th for Congress. And then I think he missed. We got Rekieta Law for Prez. Unsurprisingly, a person in and out of the country went from peace to assassination attempt. Sounds sus and deep state. Deep state. That's assuming he actually ever went to the Ukraine. I mean, I'm presume that he's tweeting it. Viva dropping gargantuan logic bombs, and you'll have to forgive me, please. I cannot say the first word of your name without thoroughly getting canceled on all the elements of social media. So I don't know if there's anything more new out there in terms of the news. If there is, we'll get to it. I'm gonna see when Barnes what he has to say about this. It's just it's outrageous. Oh, I hear. Oh, and I see now, sir. How was your Sunday, Sheriff Barnes? Where are you?
Still in Vegas.
Okay, your backdrop. Oh, hold on. So, can you bring your camera up a little bit just to see what's above your head behind you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, that is the wood cutting board. Mine is over there. I got the Canadian one. That's beautiful. Okay, you can bring it back down. That's amazing work of
That's
art.
good. I don't mind having it up.
Robert,
These are all those are all gifts from various board members at vivabondslaw.locals.com. The cool liberty, freedom, equality stars, and the great board. And there's the little moon pie truck from the great little Chattanooga company, and a good number of the books and whatnot here too. And they got some cool Trump stuff too.
you've seen the news as much as I've seen. I mean, I don't know if I'm up to date to the minute now, but I think we've got all the essentials. What are your thoughts on what the hell is going on in this world?
Yeah, it was the number one question on the poll for our topics tonight was to add this late breaking piece of information: the apparent attempted second known attempted assassination on President Trump, at Mar-a-Lago, and with questions about how is it that Secret Service let him get onto the property in the first place, raises additional questions. Now, it appeared they're more proactive this time than they had been in the past, in the sense of reacting. But it suggests ongoing issues with Secret Service adequacy and sufficiency.
One thing I forgot to mention, and I'll just take out our merch if you guys want to get one, vivafry.com. Yeah, apparently his golf round today was not on any public schedule. So the question is how the individual knew. I mean, also knew with specificity of timing as to when he was going to be on the golf course, that he was going to be on the golf course in the first place. Someone out there hypothesized that there might be a mole or a snitch within, I don't know, Secret Service or intelligence who disclosed this fact. But I mean, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's also how he got away so easily. So, I mean, it's the second major security breach by the Secret Service. Trump never had this problem when he had his own private security. So now Secret Service is responsible for his security, and twice in a few months, someone got close to being able to assassinate him. So it definitely raises questions as to who he is, what is how he knew what he knew, how he got access to what he knew. And this, by the way, comes, on the eve of even Democrats, admitting, denying Dick from Vietnam, who exaggerated some of his past military heroics, admitting and acknowledging that the Secret Service report from the first incident will be deeply embarrassing for the Secret Service and revealing systemic flaws in their security apparatus. This comes from Senator Hawley, as well as disclosed that a lot of these are diversity, equity, inclusion appointees, and that they didn't meet safety sufficiency, that there were just a wide range of breaches. And so it's unsettling that this continues to escalate in the manner that it does, and raise major questions as to the adequacy of Secret Service and any culpability or complicity of someone beyond this sole individual.
I don't know if he had a drone. I had heard reports that he might have had a drone. I'll try to confirm that. But yeah, no, this was accessible from the road. You just had to walk behind one of those canals. There's no walls up against the golf course. And apparently, not apparently, because I heard it with my own ears during that press conference, one of the guys said, yeah, they didn't secure the entire golf course because President Trump is not the president. He's not currently president. And the ultimate, it's insanity or inanity, but they're very close words, is the current president couldn't play a round of golf if he tried. So kind of useless. Why don't you give Trump that security? But the idea that they wouldn't secure the entire golf course because he's not currently the president, I do not know of any political target that would beat Trump in terms of the being number one on the list. I can't think of any. Putin, maybe, and maybe Kim Jong-un, maybe Netanyahu, but not even. I think all of those would be like a distant second at this particular moment. He's the most prized, in the cynical way, political target on earth right now. And these idiots are saying we didn't secure the entire golf course because he's not the current president, who couldn't play a round of golf if he tried, couldn't play a round of golf on a motorized wheelchair. Okay, well, that was my rant. What does he do, Robert? Like, and I was listening to the guy. I'm going to try to find his name so that I can give him credit. But on Benny Johnson, saying like a firearm is not even the biggest threat as far as he's concerned. He's more concerned with what we see out in Ukraine, like drones carrying whatever. There's like these people are his Secret Service are playing catch up off batshit loony idiots off the internet. I mean, it's insanity. Oh, but they got him because they were one golf course, they were one hole ahead. I mean, first, big freaking deal. Holy hell. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no doubt.
Let me bring this up here. Oh, my computer's gonna. What do we have on the menu tonight, Robert?
All right. Yeah. Other than the latest news, we've got corrupt cops getting caught. We've got a bunch of election 2024 cases, which was the top polled topic for amongst those listed tonight at vivabarneslaw.locals.com Sunday board poll. We've got the legality of self-defense issues arising in more cases. We have treaties, the law of treaties and extradition and deep state politics of a different kind in U.S. courts. We have Christians being fired by schools for their religious beliefs. We have woke mandates being imposed on people as a condition of their licensure. We have vaccine mandate discrimination. We have non-compete agreements and whether or not they can be prohibited by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. Amos Miller, the Amish farmer, will be going to court Tuesday, October 8th in Pennsylvania. Have an update on that case. When bankruptcy law protects you and how the various creditors try to get around those protections when things like gifting a horse to your daughter somehow is used as a pretext to try to prohibit you from being able to discharge your debts in bankruptcy. So that's just the main topics on tonight's calendar.
Well, now I got it up here. I'm going to bring it up. It's Eric D. Prince, who tweeted out, and Robert, you'll tell me what you think of this. I think it makes total sense, but I don't know how the separation of powers works between state authorities and federal authorities. Eric D. Prince, real Eric D. Prince with a K, no CK, no C.
He's Blackwater, yeah.
Okay, and he says, please assume direct control of the investigation into this attempted assassination of Donald John Trump. Tell the feds to wait in line until Florida resources have done a thorough and transparent look into all the evidence. The feds have dropped the ball thoroughly on Butler, Pennsylvania. Time for Florida to save the day, especially since this attempt happened only 300 meters from the state forensic lab. And then he tagged Benny Johnson, which is where he was sharing this. How does it work in terms of who's got the authority over the feds? Like, can the feds come in and say, you guys are out, we take control of it entirely now?
Yeah.
Can DeSantis do anything about that?
No, not really.
Any social media pressure can change any of that?
I mean, what he could investigate is some other aspect. So, like, for example, in Pennsylvania, local jurisdictions have authority because of the other people injured at the scene. In Pennsylvania, no one else has been reported as being injured at the scene other than a threat to the president or to the Secret Service themselves. So because there was nobody outside of the Secret Service or the president who was threatened or was harmed, feds have exclusive jurisdiction over the case.
The man who was giving the press conference was saying that they're going to press state charges and then the feds come in later and press federal charges. Like who
You can coordinate. I mean, there's nothing that prohibits that. But if the feds want exclusive jurisdiction, they have it. If they want to do a shared investigation, they can do that as well.
All right. Well, I'll keep scouring as we go over our subjects for the night. For anybody who's new to the channel, I don't know who that might be, but welcome if you are. We're gonna go. We might go a fair bit on all platforms tonight, just given if there's any breaking news, we'll bring it up. But well, let's start with the news of the week, or at least I know you did a bourbon with Barnes about it. You talked about it, the aftermath, the fallout, or I guess how the debate has now reverberated over time or matured over the last week. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dog. Eat the cats. It's turned into a meme. It's insane what it has done by way of shedding light not only on Springfield, Ohio, but all of America, where people did not know that this was going on in small towns. Look, ultimately, I believe we are going to get confirmation that it has happened, because even if there's only one person in a group of 20,000 people that will do something stupid. There's no question something similar has happened, something like it has happened. And we've now gotten confirmation that it happened elsewhere, at least video proof. It was Chris Rufo who confirmed this, geo-tracked, everything verified. A cat was on a spit being barbecued, and the video was on the internet, except it wasn't Springfield, Ohio. It was somewhere else, like a half an hour away. We have, as far as I'm concerned, basically heard reports, confirmed reports, whether or not they press charges afterwards is a different issue, of a guy saying, I just saw 4 Haitians taking geese out of the pond. I mean, it's an audio recording with the cops, gives the street. I verified the street. And you'll notice whenever the authorities come out and say, we have no confirmed reports of people illegally taking fowl out of the park. So I don't know what that means, illegally, because it doesn't contradict the story. It's just it might not have been illegal whatever they took. They took a duck or a canard, not a goose. We're seeing what is actually going on. We have not yet gotten the hard confirmation about the cats and the dogs in Springfield, Ohio, whatever. But this is aged in a way that I think is absolutely beneficial. It's highlighted with an amazing amount of power Kamala Harris's policy, Biden's policy of giving temporary protected status to 150,000 Haitian migrants, immigrants, whatever you want to call it. And what is your impression of the aftermath of this debate, which we covered in real time?
Yeah, so I think, we're going to cover some of the political angles of it tomorrow with People's Pundit, Richard Barris. What are the odds? People's Pundit Daily at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, also breaking down some polling issues and other issues and election prediction issues and things of that nature. But when we did that show last Monday, said that the way for Trump to dominate what becomes viral from the debate is to bring this precise topic up, to talk about the stories of Haitian migrants and other migrant communities coming in and doing disturbing things like disappearing and missing cats, dogs, other animals, and whether or not they're killing them and or eating them. Because we believe that it would dominate the viral section of a debate, and that's an important part of any debate. And that's precisely what took place. This topic utterly dominated every post-debate discussion, and the media's intended narrative of Trump falls apart, Harris surges from the debate, it went to the back burner. They already had the fake polls ready to roll out, but nobody's paying attention to those because all they're talking about, all they're memeing about, all they're even singing about is who's eating the cats and who's eating the dogs. And so the brilliant politically on Trump's behest and behalf, some of the legal issues implicated are that, what's happening is some people would say it's illegal, and it depends on exactly how all of this has worked, but it's definitely legally questionable that the Biden administration has used their claim of their authority for resettlement of asylum refugees to massively import a replacement voting and labor pool. That's what they've done. They're coming in. I mean, Frank Luntz was even bragging about this like it's a wonderful thing. So they're in working class middle America, who's already been eviscerated in the industrialized sections of this country. That's the reason why we call the industrial Midwest the Rust Belt, is because of how much has been lost. And this has been true for a long time. I had friends of mine, investigative journalists, who had been documenting this in Tennessee. They'd been documenting all across the country that the so-called non-government organizations and charities are in cahoots with big corporations to import a docile, supplicant, lower wage labor pool to replace local working class communities. And then they enrich all the politicians along the way. So usually the mayors, the county commissioners, the district attorneys, the sheriffs, the cops are all in one way, shape, or form paid off to turn a blind eye to this and to try to keep a lid on public disclosure. So you have the small town of Springfield, Ohio, that's been going to county commissions and complaining about everything that's happening, about surging rents, about about people driving on the roads that don't appear to know what they're doing, about insurance rates spiraling out of control. And one of the things they complained about, though is not the only one by any stretch, nor the main one, was cats going missing, animals going missing, ducks and goose going missing from parks. And it should come as no surprise if you know anything about the this sort of animation tradition within the religious. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but there's a religious tradition, spiritual tradition goes back to ancient civilizations, but very strong in Africa to this day. And the Haitians tend to be more representative of those traditions than other African ancestral groups were. Voodoo originated and stayed strong in Haiti. It's borrowing from old African spiritual traditions. And the idea was that you could take on the spirit of another animal. And this comes in all kinds of forms, that there's beliefs that you can actually physically transform into those animals, that ancestors may have done so, and things like this. But part of the way you can take on the spirit of these other animals is by eating the animal. And no less an authority on this than former President Barack Obama, who talked about it, who talked about when he was in Asia, in Africa, and other places. One of the things he did was eat things like dog, and that the part of the belief structure is this taking on the spirit of what you do, because he talks about maybe we'll get to eat tiger and then I'll become a tiger. So this should not be a shock to anybody that this is going on at some level. There have been stories like this of various kinds all over the country. The media just wants to suppress them because they like importing the cheap labor and future voters to replace the working class Americans they hold in complete contempt. And when Trump raised this, they would go ballistic. They would be snideful and contemptuous, as they typically are. They would ignore the empirical evidence of it. They would enlist their corrupted allies, like the mayor of Springfield, like many of the county commissioners in Springfield. But they would mostly take the bait, because as long as this topic is being discussed, it's a topic that favors Trump politically, because of what J.D. Vance has very well articulated. Our former interview of J.D. Vance somehow showed up in the news this week.
Twice. Another one went back to that interview and called me a far right podcaster. I was going to make a joke. We've been right, all right, but far right. We've been extremely right.
Yeah, exactly. Get it right. Not the just right is right. That's the underlying political dynamics of what's taking place, and they're trying to cover it up. And there was some debate. Well, they're not really illegal.
Yeah.
Well, the question is whether this authority used by the Biden administration is in fact being properly done legally. The issue is that nobody can sue. Everybody just gets to complain. And because everybody's corrupt and complicit in the political infrastructure, and the press is on board with this strategy, and part of that is to gaslight the world into believing there are no problems. And even worse, the reaction of the FBI and the Biden Justice Department was to threaten people that if they talk about it, if they discuss it, if they disclose it, they might be subject to federal criminal prosecution for hate crimes. Started posting boards up relating to this. Because, basically everybody's complicit. What's happening is the corporations get a real cheap, docile labor supply that takes lower wages because the government is subsidizing them out of taxpayer dollars. And they can't complain because they fear if they complain about their employment conditions, they get shipped off back to Haiti or wherever else it is they came from. And the local politicians are all in cahoots and lining their pockets with it. And so they have no end. It's almost like the story that Scorsese made into a film about how they tried to scam the Native American tribe that hid oil in eastern Oklahoma. It's that level of corruption and collusion and criminality by pretty much almost everybody. The governor got caught, and so he had to suddenly do something. But the reality is he knew about this and had kept his mouth shut about it because his political allies are getting enriched by it. So, that's the levels and layers of it. As Senator Vance, vice presidential candidate Vance, explained throughout, he goes, there needed to be a highlight on this issue because I mean, Elon Musk retweeted Vance's, going it through how he changed his mind on Trump from 2016. And a big part of it was the arrogant contempt these elites have for ordinary people. And then you have so-called journalists like Michael Tracy, who wants to lecture everybody about this, but can't get off his lazy rear end and just go to Springfield. He's supposed to be a journalist. So if you're going to be snideful about it, Michael, go investigate. It's what you tell other people to do. So go down to Springfield, because Christopher Rufo did, and he used proper investigative forensic mechanisms and methods of the kind you would use to substantiate it as evidence in court that detailed this is happening. And if you knew anything about Haitian culture and tradition, it would not shock you at all. I mean, this is a religion that still cuts off the chickens' heads and pours blood on their heads and does a bunch of stuff. It's part of the traditions. Not to mention, you're talking about a society that has been brutalized by violence for centuries. So you combine all the things going on, it'd be no shock at all that this is taking and pretending, oh, this is some form of bigotry to expose their corruption, to expose their illegality, to expose their stealing American wages and jobs to those burdening working class communities across this country. No, they are the criminals. They are the ones engaging in illicit behavior. They are the bigots. They are the prejudiced ones. And ultimately, they're going to lose on this politically.
Let me bring one thing up here. I saw from Chrissy in our chat. She says, "I don't understand how the guy could have gotten so close to Trump." Let me play you this part here. This is from the press conference today.
All right. And at this level that he is at right now, he's not the city president.
Oh, okay.
If he was, we would have had this entire golf course around it. But because he's not, the security is limited to the areas that the Secret Service deems possible. So I would imagine that the next time he comes to the golf course, there'll probably be a little bit more people.
I believe is the
perimeter.
state.
But
okay, so stop it.
Secret Service,
now that DeSantis can do something about, right? That the state of Florida can do something about. Why isn't it secure? So what he just said is that they defer to the Secret Service's protection, but that normally they have an expansive area of protection that they themselves are responsible for. They should know better. I mean, kind of frankly, this is a little bit on DeSantis then. What he's admitting is traditionally when he's president, that the state takes a lead in securing the outer perimeter. Then why aren't you securing the outer perimeter? Do that now. That's preposterous. That's a failure of Palm Beach. That's a failure of that county. That's a failure of, to some degree at least, Governor DeSantis.
Okay, and I'm just confirming because I don't want the sheriff said this. So let me see here if I go.
If that's the case, then that's absolutely the responsibility and failure of the local and county and state government.
Here we go. Just so that you raise a good point, Robert. Palm Beach County. Let me bring it up.
I mean, DeSantis did absolutely nothing when the feds came in and raided Mar-a-Lago. Did nothing. Didn't assert any protection or privilege. He was too busy with he and his wife measuring the drapes in the White House. Maybe it's time to get off his rear end and do something, right? Imagine if this had happened on his terrain. If this had succeeded, he would be at least partially responsible for not securing the. He should know better. Why Palm Beach County Sheriff state securing that? That's ridiculous.
Well, and now that you say this out loud, I'll just read it for everybody who's not necessarily able to read this. Is Palm Beach County Sheriff Rick Bradshaw revealed details of the Sunday afternoon incident during a press conference, shedding light on how the suspect managed to get so close to the former president. Golf course is surrounded by shrubbery, so when somebody gets into the shrubbery, they're pretty much out of sight. Bradshaw explained. He added that the crucial point, at this level, he's not the president, yada, yada, yada. So that's state level. This is the same place where the local mayor of Palm Beach was trying to give Trump some grief about how he was using the property and they might pull the permits or something like that. You make another good point.
DeSantis should step in and make sure this doesn't happen in his state. That he can do. You don't have to defer to the Secret Service on that aspect. Secret Service controls what they control. What he just admitted is that they typically control the outer perimeter, that they knew about these risks, and that they deliberately chose not to do anything about it because, well, he's not the president right now. I mean, that's preposterous. Now, I think a lot of the
Wow.
local politicians in Palm Beach are Democratic historically.
Okay, let's not get too conspiratorial, tinfoil hatty, although it's
Well,
definitely a question.
people should call out DeSantis so he steps up and makes sure this doesn't happen again. That isn't that hard. DeSantis can step in and fix it ASAP.
All right, so that was the fallout of the debate, fallout of the debate, or at least the awareness of what's going on. They're talking about temporary protected status for Haitians in particular, and I think
Oh, are
Kamala
we just shut down on YouTube?
better not have been. Let me refresh here. No, I think I hold on.
It says YouTube nuked the stream.
Oh, we're back. Okay, hold on. It's coming back. I'm sorry. I got an ad playing on YouTube. Oh, who puts these ads on? If only I had premium. Get Rumble Premium, people. Okay, we're back. We're back. We're back. I see it. Okay, good. Sons of bitches are going to try to nuke me. They what did they do? They age restricted my video about the shooting, which we're going to talk about in Massachusetts, because of that very violent video at the end of it, which was the actual incident. They demonetized something else. Oh, I got a copy claim on the video from today, which I'm disputing because it's quintessential fair use. You copyright troll sons of bitches. Okay, so the question that I had was. Kamala has basically admitted now to giving temporary, like just bypassing all oversight and just handing out TPS like it's toilet paper, temporary protective status. She's admitted to doing it with basically, I think it's 155 at least thousand Haitians. Who else have they? What other groups have they done this with? What other asylum seekers have they done this with?
Some numbers I've seen has the Haitian number up to 500,000. So, I mean, they're also in cahoots with so-called non-governmental organizations, NGOs, that are often in themselves complicit with a wide range of questionable behavior. Big corporations, and dig into the Clinton Foundation in Haiti and some of the NGOs and the allegations that came up later. You can read about how UN personnel that were there were later found guilty of all kinds of horrendous sexual abuse. You can track into other forms of child sex trafficking that was connected to these organizations. So these people are not good faith actors. These are not the Underground Railroad of today, just trying to seek to help immigrants. That's a lie. You dig into these groups, they're politically motivated, they're corrupted. Watch the film The Whistleblower about what she discovered about what was going on in Central Europe during the Balkan conflicts. And Rachel Weisz plays the lead role. Maybe we'll have it be a Saturday movie night at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. This is very disturbingly commonplace. So we don't know how many people they've been bringing in, because a lot of this information the media has been keeping a lid on, and extraordinarily so. I mean, the local Springfield Press should have been doing their job. Who was the guy you interviewed that got kicked out of YouTube?
Taylor Hansen. Taylor Hansen
went down there, and he started talking to people. I think Savannah Hernandez was going to be talking to some people. Christopher Rufo goes down and starts talking to people, and they find story after story after story of locals confirming all of this. And why wasn't this being detailed before? How do you have a town being taken over by immigrants from a completely foreign culture who are replacing them, causing nightmarish issues to the local population, and nobody in the press is covering it? And if anybody even talks about it, you're accused of being a crazy conspiracy bigot. I mean, it's as soon as they started going off the charts on that, it's like, well, this is guaranteed to be true. Right? I mean, as soon as they start screaming that you can't talk about this or you're a terrible human being, that means it's true. And then when the FBI starts threatening people, you talk about this, we're going to put you on one of our long lists these days. They actually put up billboards saying, please call. They put it up in a lot of the migrants don't speak English, so they put it up in French, Haitian French, and which is what I used for the Hush Hush series on the Clinton death curse, because the Clintons have a long, weird ties to Haiti, not just the Clinton Foundation. So, if Papa Doc was rather infamous, so much so they made a whole Bond movie loosely about Papa Doc. He's the inspiration for Live and Let Live, or Live and Let Die, whatever that name of that one is. One of the better Bond films. and a lot of what they're talking about is was actually true about Papa Doc. So and then Baby Doc was there after that. I mean, it's just one disaster after another. So I think the net effect of all of this is to expose the depth, degree of corruption in our political class, from the local level to the federal level. And the reason why the press is bothered by it is it embarrasses and humiliates and exposes them for who and what they are. And I think ordinary people were just shocked by this, led them to make inquiries. And then you can, it doesn't, well, as you found, it doesn't take a whole lot to find video of Haitians doing this. This is not new. Again, if you think from their traditions, this is not some radical deviant thing. This is, I'm taking the animal, spirit of the animal, etc. So they don't think of it like we think of it. But that's part of the point. It's a massive culture conflict.
It's Robert, it's so preposterous because like there's videos up in Canada of foreigners who don't know fishing laws and don't know that you can't net fish out of a river, and they're doing it. And like it's first of all, nobody's unawareness of the law is no defense. But there are cultural things which are, if you think it's racist, then you just basically deny the differences between cultures, and good for you. But there's videos of Indians up in Canada, not natives, but from India, netting fish out of the river, not knowing you can't do that. The idea that it's so outlandish that out of 20,000 people that came from Haiti on temporary protected status, that some of them might be like getting a duck out of the pond. I mean, it's even stupider to pretend it's so outlandish that it's offensive, but it really does highlight. It's like Ukraine. 10 years ago, Ukraine was corrupt, had a Nazi problem, and its number one export was human trafficking. Then the war comes, and then you can't talk about any of those things. I just pull up articles, Vice News talking about cannibalism in Haiti. The chief leader of the opposition street gang named Barbecue. Like these are things that are out there that have been out there forever, and now it's like all of a sudden taboo to even talk about what has been well documented over the course of a decade. This is the soft bigotry of low expectations, and you are revealing it in real time, where the truth, set aside the disputed elements, the truth of it is offensive on its face to Americans. And you have Taylor Hansen interviewing that young mother of a kid in there, an old black lady who's sitting there sobbing because they can't get food anymore. They can't get anything because the way they say it, if I say it like that, I'll be called racist. But she's black, so she can say it. These Haitians coming in, they're getting cars, they're getting money, they're getting rent money, and we're sitting out here on the street like a bunch of bums because our government doesn't want to take care of us. That's the most offensive element of this entire story, which has now been thoroughly put on blast.
Yeah, no doubt about
it. What else do we do? I'll segue. We'll talk about the ones that I'm more familiar with. I tried to do a lot of the reading, but then I obviously got mildly sidetracked at about 2:00. I don't know when it was. It was a little later than that, 3:30. Let's talk about the shooting in Massachusetts. Like, I haven't seen Bronca's breakdown as to whether or not this was clear-cut self-defense. Some people are suggesting he was saying it isn't, and I haven't listened to his interpretation to know if I would be shocked that he would come to the conclusion that it wasn't clear-cut self-defense. This is a veteran who's at a pro-Israeli protest. It's a very small protest. Some lunatic from across the street starts yelling back and forth. And the other thing, oh, you guys are supporting genocide. The guy's name was Caleb Gannon, who I think has been charged with assault, which is ironic how both players get charged with assault, even when one is clearly defending from the clearly unprovoked attack. So the guy, they start shouting at each other, yada, yada, you're supporting genocide. The guy runs across 2 lanes of traffic, tackles, the guy's name is Scott Hayes, to the ground. There's an Israeli woman screaming at the top of her lungs. Scott Hayes takes out a pistol, pops off a round in his stomach, drops the pistol behind him, tells the people there to secure his pistol, his firearm, tells the crowd to stop stomping on the guy's head because they were like stomping and pushing him down. They administer first aid to him. The cops come and immediately arrest and charge Scott Hayes. I think they only later charged Gannon. He's expected to survive his injuries. He had some choice social media posts as well where he said nobody supporting Israel should feel safe, yada, yada. Okay. The legalities of this, hold on one second. Oh, yes. So they charged Scott Hayes with assault with a weapon and violation of constitutional rights causing injury. I read the statute. I still don't know what it means. It seems like any act of assault is a violation of a constitutional right causing injury. But I did look into the DA. Her name is, it will come to me in a second, Marianne something, and I'll get it when I get it. Seems to be Soros funded directly or indirectly. She satisfied one of the 3 criteria of a right conservative outlet that determined her to be one of the many hundred and some odd DAs that Soros has funded. They're charging this guy. I cannot imagine how this could be any more clear cut of a case of self-defense. They let him out on $5,000 bail or bond or whatever it is. What's your take? I mean, I presume you've seen the video. What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, there's the legal aspect of self-defense, the political aspect, and the cultural aspect. So legally, it can vary by state. My own view is that the Second Amendment enshrines a constitutional right to self-defense, not just the right to bear arms, but the right to self-defense. Supreme Court has often utilized that language, and I've taken some cases up saying, let's start extending it to apply to state self-defense standards, because some states are undermining self-defense standards. So depending on which state, in some states you can stand your ground, in some states you can't. In some states, if the person's coming in your home, defending your home is grounds for self-defense. In other states, it's not. In some states, you can presume their entry is a threat to your well-being. In other places, it's not. In some cases, you have a duty to retreat and try to find the least confrontational response. In other states, you don't have any duty to retreat. And so people commonly believe certain things about self-defense that don't always apply state by state. State like Massachusetts, you now get to the political aspect, because a lot of how the law is interpreted, how the law is enforced, how juries apply it, all comes down to the local politics and local culture of those communities. And in Massachusetts, you have a overwhelmingly professional managerial class, liberal democratic governed state that fundamentally doesn't believe in self-defense, and consequently limits the ability to utilize those defenses in court. It restricts its interpretation, and jurors often reject those potential defenses depending on the jury pool you have.
It's Marianne Ryan is the DA, Democrat, and apparently Soros funded. So that's I forgot her name. Okay,
I mean, it comes from that sort of liberal democratic pedigree, so that's the approach they're going to take reflexively in these kind of cases. And that's where I think there needs to be a Supreme Court recognition that the Second Amendment enshrines certain core principles of self-defense that a state cannot override.
Mm-hmm.
And because otherwise they're going to continue to do so. I defended Michael Strickland in Oregon, where a bunch of people had previously beat him up, and he was a little fella, and they were approaching to beat him up again, and all he did was flash a gun for 5 seconds, for just a few seconds, and put it back in while he stepped back to say stay away. He got prosecuted with all the felonies. The people that had continually harassed him did not. And why? Because that's Portland, Oregon. That's the politics of Portland, Oregon. His original defense lawyer decided not to even have a jury trial because of how bad the jury environment was in Portland, Oregon. And so, I mean, that's really, I think it's more of a political cultural issue, and the failure of the Supreme Court to enforce it at a national constitutional level that leads to these weaknesses and frailties and vulnerabilities in our self-defense laws, because it increasingly depends on where you're at. I mean, look at what happened in Austin, Texas. It required the governor and the pardon commission to get involved because you have a liberal Democratic prosecutor in a liberal Democratic county where all the judges are liberal Democrats and all the jurors are liberal Democrats. And what happens is you might have self-defense in Texas, but you don't if you're inside the Republic of Austin. I mean, he needed the public outrage to lead to the governor to step in for what appeared to many of us to be a clear case of self-defense. And so I think that's what's, to me, this behavior is classic self-defense. Now, I mean, I'm from East Tennessee, so our definition of self-defense extends far. So your granddaddy did something wrong, well, that's still self-defense. Never forget, never forgive, hold the line. Sometimes the best deterrence is to let somebody know if you do something wrong, your grandkid's going to pay the price 100 years from now. That tends to discourage people from doing wrong to you in the first place. That's the utility of vendettas. They're undervalued, understated. Like people are like, why is Trump being critical of Taylor Swift? Because about a third of Taylor Swift's audience are Trump fans, and he wants her to lose money and lose fans for doing what she did. Pure and simple. Trump has made this clear to everybody. Okay, you can step out, think you're just going to get bonus points. You're going to lose fans. You're going to lose support. You're going to lose money. This doesn't get to be cost free. And that's the point of vendettas, is that it deters. It's a better deterrence than locking people up forever for simply acting on self-defense like I think this gentleman did.
I was going to say something to that, but yeah, no, I'm trying to find the definitive confirmation of I don't know how you find out who Soros funds and how the PACs that he funds finance these candidates, and how you can find out who are the biggest donors to these candidates in their election campaigns. But
well, that's good. Like, that transparency is the point and purpose of our election laws. However, in one of our many election cases this week, in Kentucky, they were trying the sort of the democratically aligned people on a commission were trying to prohibit people from exercising their free speech rights by limiting how much they could spend on constitutional amendments pending in that state.
Well, before we get there, Robert, I wanted to say welcome to the club. MQBK is now, I presume, a member of our community. Let me see if I can just bring this up here. I don't think this is a deep state assassin because they caught the shooter alive, but it could be a smaller unofficial copycat conspiracy. Someone was suggesting that, this might have been a distraction from something, but I'm trying to think of like what the conspiracy would be with this. This guy was trying to live stream it. There's not a question he wasn't known to authorities. Please play the remix song of Trump, They're Eating the Dogs, with Hassan Piker. That guy made the song, now hates the fact that his song is helping Trump. All right, I'll get there. I'll pull that up while Robert tells us about the Kentucky case. What's going on in Kentucky? There's a lot of election cases, and some of them that you're giving me, I felt like I had seen them already because I did like 4 years ago. So you're gonna have to go through what's new again. Old is new again. But what's going on in Kentucky?
So this comes back from Citizens United, and this is where I disagree with people on the left, disagree with Robert Kennedy and others. I fully support Citizens United because this is a classic example of the point I've tried to make. I am all for transparency, laws that require transparency, unless it's punishing people. I mean, there's still a right of anonymous speech, so it depends on but in terms of candidate giving, I'm all for transparency. Tell me who's buying the ads. Tell me who's, if you're going to engage in the court of public opinion in impacting a ballot issue or a candidate issue, then I think disclosure of who you are is fair to the American people, that it can pass strict scrutiny. I'm not for any limits, because all limits do is empower the donor and aristocratic class to gatekeep who can run for office and who can successfully campaign for office. What causes an ideas ever reach a ballot, which causes an ideas you ever learn about in terms of interpreting the ballot, understanding the ballot. And so but what happens when you say, well, we're just going to limit a group A or group B or group C from making donations, it's going to be abused. The powerful and the privileged will always find a way if they need to, and they do. And otherwise, what it does is, let's say you're a candidate or you're a cause, and you're limited to $2,500 per person, per household, or whatever it is. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means the aristocratic class as a class has to agree to support your campaign because they're the only ones that have access to that in the first place. And all the donation limit does is force you to beg the donor class for approval. By contrast, if you might have just one Elon Musk, you might have one Peter Thiel, you might have one Donald Trump, you might have one Ross Perot, who lines up with your populist principles against the entire establishment in the donor class, all of a sudden you can compete on an equal level. And in fact, all political revolutions throughout history have had a disproportionately, a dissident membership within the elite class that helps organize and fund and support that political revolution for it to happen. This is even true of peasant revolutions. They had certain lords and knights on their side. The Magna Carta doesn't come about if some of the knights and lords weren't on that side. So what Kentucky they did, so all Citizens United said is spending money is speech. Imagine if you said, oh, you have free speech. You just can't spend any money in support of it. Right? I mean, that's the same thing as censoring speech. Yeah, you have free speech. You just can't use a megahorn. You have free speech. You just can't spend money to have a YouTube platform. You have free speech. You just can't tell it. You can't spend money to share that message with anybody. I mean that's speech prohibition. Don't call it a funding prohibition. It's a speech prohibition. And what the Supreme Court said in Citizens United is the only legitimate basis for even donor limits is the fear of quid pro quo corruption, which I find idiotic. Transparency solves that problem. If we know so-and-so's given $1 million to so-and-so, fine. In fact, that's better than what we currently have, where they give it in shadowy packs that you don't know about that you find out 5-10 years later. We'd be better off with no donor limitations and complete transparency as to candidate donations. Well, in this case, Kentucky's commission didn't want people spending money on a particular constitutional amendment. And they wanted to force them into this sort of donor class structure that you got to use this system and that mechanism and get these people's approval. And consequently, they were basically prohibited from meaningfully spending money in support of their speech. So they sued, and quite correctly, they won. Because when you're restricting spending on any issue, you're restricting speech. And in order to justify it, you need strict scrutiny, which means you need a compelling state interest. And the mechanism to enforce that compelling state interest is narrowly tailored to that compelling state interest. And a complete ban on people spending money to support constitutional amendments in Kentucky, unless in this very limited, discrete method that they established, was not strict scrutiny, was not narrowly tailored, did not comply with a compelling state interest. And so it was a good case, but a reminder that people keep floating these election law reforms that would empower the aristocratic class and disempower ordinary people in challenges to that establishment class. So be skeptical of it for reasons independent of the First Amendment grounds, to make sure if they can ever get to the point where they can say, they can separate, because we'll get to another case where we talk about how they're trying to draw these distinctions. When they try to say, oh, that's not speech because it's conduct, you're spending money, that's indistinguishable. That's indistinguishable. There is no free speech unless you have the right to spend as much money as you want on it. Otherwise, they effectively can control your speech by controlling your spending on that speech.
By popular demand, it's probably one of the best works of art that we're ever going to see in real time. I don't know if it's public domain. I won't play the whole thing. Listen to this, people.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame.
It's a work of art.
They're eating the dogs.
All right, we can stop it there. It's simply a work of art. Like Shmoyoho, they do the Songify. They've had a bunch that are just, they go into the space capsule because it's peak human creativity, intelligence, and art. That's right up there, and it's a damn good song. I'll share it with everybody there. What was one of the other election cases that I did?
Oh, yeah, well, there's multiple. There's Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Illinois, and this relates to our debate discussion of debate rebrief, rebutting various legal claims made what exactly happened in 2020, because there were a lot of false claims by people like Stephen Richer, the Arizona election official who I think is soon to be tossed from office. He was the weird guy, remember, from Arizona 2022 that we talked about. With the other guy that was coincidentally probably out of a bad simulation named Bill Gates, another crook, another criminal there in Arizona. But is that remember what Trump said during the debate about the reason why he wasn't able to go forward with the election cases was because of standing.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave a great denunciation of standing, a very common sense denunciation that shows his the he was able to translate it in practical political terms. How is it the president of the United States, running for president of the United States, doesn't have standing to determine whether or not the election was done correctly for him for that office? He goes, he goes, if I don't have standing, who has standing? So it was a brilliant way of articulating, but a bunch of the fake law Twitter types and some of the fake law tuber types and some of the fake press folks tried to spin that was totally false. Oh, no. Every case was on the merits and on a trial, and standing had nothing to do with what happened in 2020. So I thought it was a good opportunity to correct that misapprehension, to do a real fact check from the law on what happened in election 2020.
Well, let's do it one by one. I remember Pennsylvania definitively standing.
Well, really, there are only 3 cases that Trump was a party to, and only 2 election contests that Trump was a party to. So the first one was Pennsylvania, where they ultimately determined he didn't have standing to challenge certain rules that had changed in Pennsylvania. And the only 2 election contests were brought, one in Georgia, one in state court, one in federal court, because in state court, they would not hear it. By rule, they had to hear it within 5 days, and they just refused to calendar it, refused to schedule, in direct violation, flagrant violation of the law. And all the Georgia courts went along with it. Georgia Court of Appeals refused to schedule it. Georgia Supreme Court refused to schedule it. And so then they went to federal district court. And what did the federal district court say? No standing. No standing. Can't require the Georgia courts to actually hear your election contest. So his election contest was never heard. The other one was brought to the Supreme Court of the United States. The main case challenging the election contest outside of Georgia was the case that Trump joined, that hundreds of congressmen joined, that many states' attorneys general joined, that many leading legal scholars joined, and that was the direct original action brought before the Supreme Court of the United States about whether other states had violated the Constitution and how the election had been conducted. And what happened there? Supreme Court said no standing. That was the exact words, no standing. That was the exact words in all 3 cases. So when people like Stephen Richer, when other people go out there and pretend, oh no, it was factually decided, it was decided on the merits, these cases concern Trump as a party, they're just flat out lying. Trump was exactly right. The fact check is Trump was precisely true. And to go back to what was in those election contests, because that's magically being re-challenged again, is what was being challenged in Georgia and what was being challenged for the U.S. Supreme Court were the same. Which was the question of whether only constitutionally qualified voters cast presidential ballots, whether the method by which people voted was a constitutionally qualified method of casting a ballot for the president of the United States, and third, whether the canvassing and counting of those ballots by election officials was a constitutionally qualified mechanism of counting and canvassing the ballots. The legal standard does not require you prove any fraud. The legal standard does not require you prove how those people would have voted otherwise if it had been an honest election. All you have to show is that there were more votes in doubt because constitutionally qualified procedures were not followed than the margin of victory in your particular election. That was the challenge before the Supreme Court of the United States. That was the challenge in the state of Georgia. And for those that have forgot, over 400 sworn documents and declarations from experts and witnesses substantiated that more than 100,000 people voted in Georgia who either were not constitutionally qualified to vote or the method and mechanism by which they cast their ballots was not a constitutionally qualified mechanism or method, and the canvassing and counting of the ballots was not done in a constitutionally qualified manner. One person, one vote. That's what the Supreme Court is supposed to be our principle. But they've refused to enforce it when it came to 2020's election. They never decided whether or not those allegations were true. And you know the allegations were true because the Democrats in every court involved said they didn't want to deal with the merits. If Democrats were right on the merits, they would have been eager for vindication on the merits. Instead, they were all begging, please, judge, please don't allow this case to go to trial on the merits. None of them reached trial on the merits. And in fact, no adjudication on these merits were ever heard. Any independent evidentiary inquiry will see there were more votes cast that are in doubt for whether they were cast by a constitutionally qualified voter, or the method by which they voted was constitutionally qualified, or the method by which their ballot was counted in canvass was constitutionally qualified, then the margin of victory in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona enough to determine the outcome of 2020 election. So don't listen to any of the fraudsters and the rest out there that are trying to gaslight you into thinking something happened that never happened in 2020.
No, well, but
it's a
Robert,
full, fair trial on the merits.
the talking points were there were 60 Trump lawsuits, and nobody can even, it gets too complicated. It's the scattershot. There were 60 lawsuits, and Trump lost all of them. He was only plaintiff in 3.
Yeah.
Who? I mean, just refresh all of our memories. Who were the plaintiffs in the other
suits
cases?
Involved a whole bunch of other people that brought suit. Sidney Powell brought suit. Other people brought suit. There again, by the way, none of Sidney Powell's cases ever reached the merits either. And I mean, almost none of these cases reached the merits. In the few that did, in Arizona, they discovered they had a Democratic expert come in and wanted to see who, if people were wondering, who were the constitutionally unqualified voters in Georgia that they proved with everything, with the numbers and all of it. It was people under the age of 18 at the time they registered. It was people. They found, by the way, thousands of dead people who were said to have voted after they died. So when people say, "Oh, that never happened," no, they documented one by one in Georgia. The people's family, they found that, for example, one of the little tricks and grifts was to register people at post office boxes and then to mass mail those votes in. This is part of what 2,000 Mules was all about. The goal was to get their hands on ballots by any means, and then to cast a ballot in the name of a person they knew wouldn't otherwise be able to disagree with that ballot. Dead people make great versions of that. In other cases, underage people make good example versions of that. You register they're not going to vote because they know they're not supposed to. Somebody else registers for them. Somebody else gets the ballot in their name. And one of the ways you detect this is they register in a different county than they actually live, right? This popped up all over the place. There are people who are registered in other states who are magically registering to vote in Georgia. People who voted in other states who voted in Georgia. And then people like Matt Brainerd would call them up and they were like, "I didn't vote in Georgia." A person went public about this that had gone from Arizona to Tennessee. And because his demographics fit the right Democratic demographics, young black male, I assume people in Arizona thought this would never get called out. He did call it out because he was like, "I don't live in Arizona. I didn't vote. I moved away from there 9 months ago." And so you register a bunch of homeless people to vote. The homeless people don't vote, but they're not likely to step forward and say, "Hold on a second, I didn't vote." And most people don't even know they're listed on the voter rolls as voting. So so they don't know to call it out in the first place. It's a massive investigative inquiry. But they went through with a fine-tooth comb, documenting one after the other, after the other, after the other. In terms of constitutionally unqualified method of voting, that is mail-in voting, which requires a certain way of requesting the ballot, a certain way of receiving the ballot, a certain way of filling out the ballot, a certain way of filling out the envelope outside of it, in terms of dating and signatures, and then a certain way of returning the ballot, and then that ballot having a signature match check. In all the states, Democrats had systematically sued and done secret deals with corrupted and conflicted government officials to not enforce signature matches. In fact, in Arizona, when the Democratic Party's own expert evaluated, it said too many of the signatures don't match. It was 10 times more than the margin of victory in Arizona. What does the judge suddenly decide? Oh, you have to prove that the reason the signature doesn't match is fraud. That's a direct that contradicts the law because that's an almost impossible path. You're going to try to find those 350 or 500 or 10,000 witnesses. You're going to go try. I mean, that's an impossible evidentiary burden. That's deliberately why the law is written the way it is. So you don't have to prove that. They changed the standards in order to avoid accountability in the 2020 election. So Trump is absolutely right. He was denied on procedural grounds. The few cases that had any substantive reached any substantive judgment were not Trump's cases. They were other people's cases. And even in those few rare cases, the courts, there's not one jury trial that ever happened on the election fraud issues, ever. So anyone who says that is lying to you. Trump was right. Legal fact check. Trump right. Media wrong. Law 2 wrong. Law Twitter wrong.
Robert, just because it's coming out and it's breaking and we can't not discuss it, I won't play the entire thing. This seems to be the shooter giving an interview News Romania interview Trump would-be assassin. It's just
Please tell
And
me
this is the claim
who
of
you
this
are
person.
and
We don't
why.
know yet this person was the attempted
no.
assassin.
This is the name that's been
This is who
released.
Well, somebody, yeah. I just want to be clear on this because this has been a trap for a lot of people. Somebody's saying this person was the attempted assassin. We don't know that. We're not confirming that.
And absolutely noted. This is based on the identification from the image of the individual who got arrested, and the name has been confirmed by the media. And this is now an interview that
appears to be, but we don't know for certain.
Agreed.
Why are you here?
56 from the U.S. From North Carolina originally, so live in Hawaii now. So flew all the way from Hawaii here. So the question as far as why I'm here, to me, a lot of the other conflicts are gray, but this conflict is definitely black and white. This is about good versus evil.
Okay.
This is a storybook. Any movie we've ever watched, this is definitely evil against good. I mean,
well, okay. The man looks clearly not mentally all there. So.
Well, and he was connected to Ukraine, and that this was not a surprise. The bogus story that the media pushed about Russia and Ukraine, that was a lie from the very inception, was going to bring in people of this nature and lead and misdirect them. I mean, when you're justifying sending weapons to Ukraine for the purposes of bombing long-range bombs into Russia, and the president of Russia comes out and says that will be a declaration of war by the United States and NATO against Russia. I mean, you want to get into it, and you have people who had power within the military hierarchy, people who are close to literally the finger on the button kind of decision-making authority within the administrative regulatory aspect of that, saying that it was a good idea because we could just completely nuke all of Russia because Russia wouldn't respond. The level of idiocy was astounding. This is somebody, again, that had a high-ranking military position and is sitting there saying, oh, yeah, well, this is a great idea. Well, let's start nuclear war with Russia because Russia, we'll nuke them all before they can do anything. In other words, that's real genocide. That's mass murder on a scale that's never happened. I mean, in Japan, we dropped nuclear bomb on 2 places to get Japan to surrender to save 1 million American lives. We didn't nuke the entire island. I mean, we didn't do it preemptively with a country we weren't at war with. I mean, that's the kind of insanity, and it breeds this kind of insanity. And the way we've always described it is these are political permission slips by the political class incentivizing and encouraging people to act out their most violent wishes. That's what's really it's in 2020. It was, hey, go out and commit election fraud. It was, don't worry, we're going to make sure ballots are everywhere. One of the issues in Georgia, the guy, Ratburger, sent ballots to everybody in violation of the law. He'd cut a secret deal with Mark Elias, criminal money launderer for the Clintons, by the way. Just remember, Mark Elias, criminal money launderer for the Clintons. But that's because they gave out a political permission slip that Trump was evil, so it's okay to cheat in the election. Now they're giving out a political permission slip that says it's okay to do other things to the president of the United States. That's what they're encouraging. That's what they're incentivizing, and that's what they've functionally rewarded by their mishandling of the Butler PA case.
Okay, so I'm trying to distract you from the other election cases.
Oh, yes. There were several. I mean, we've got Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Illinois, and then a great one on election gambling.
Let's finish up the election ones, and then we'll get to the gambling one, which I was interested in, and I was trying to see if I could deposit into my Polymarket account, which I still don't seem to be able to do. What were the other election cases?
So in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, remember the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania, same court, by the way, that will be hearing Amos Miller, the Amish farmer, appeal where the government is trying to shut him down entirely, the state of Pennsylvania, on Tuesday, October 8th at 9:30 a.m. in Allegheny County Courthouse. But it'll be the Commonwealth Court that will hold the oral argument. Same Commonwealth Court has been busy issuing a lot of rulings over the last several weeks that appeared to many people to simply greenlight stealing the 2024 presidential election in the very close contested race of Pennsylvania. And you got the Pennsylvania Department of State, the same Pennsylvania Department of State that was involved in the illegal incarceration and imprisonment of Rusty Herr and Ethan Wentworth, two farm workers who work on Amish farms, who were literally ordered in prison by that same Commonwealth court at the request of the Pennsylvania Department of State, that has been promising everybody they won't be able to get around to counting those ballots on election night. And you might be misled by the results you hear. And the New York Times was confirming it again this week.
Yeah, I think they said it. It was the New York Times. Was it confirming it about New York State or about Pennsylvania? I'm confused as to which way I saw that. How does it make sense? I mean, it's incomprehensible that how long do they have to take? Like, I appreciate one of the cases was whether or not they count ballots that are received after the election, but that are post-dated prior to the election. And I mean, maybe, I don't know how many of those ballots you get in the ordinary run of things. Typically, it's not enough to decide the election, so you don't have to worry about it. How many are there this time around?
Well, here's the issue. So you have people like Garrett Archer in Arizona, affiliated with some of the Arizona election officials, who is trying to gaslight everybody into believing that these are just technical requirements that are meant to disenfranchise people, and that's what the Republicans are doing. What he was gaslighting people on was by withholding certain key information, which is, for as has come out, the union representing the U.S. Postal Service has endorsed Kamala Harris for president. As has also come out, conservative election officials have been complaining that the U.S. Postal Service is going slow at ensuring that they timely receive mail-in ballots. So what could happen? What could happen is what some of us believe there was at least inferential evidence of from 2020. So if you tracked, there were people tracking in live time all the mail-in ballot. The mail-in balloting numbers were too low for Biden to win in 2020 unless he hit certain metrics on election day. By the Biden campaign's own admissions, they missed them all in the key states. Trump overperformed the needed targets for Biden to get. So what happens? Ballots stop getting counted. In some cases in Georgia, Republicans are tricked into leaving, deceived into leaving by, water pipe problems, etc. And then they pull out the ballots and start counting as soon as they're gone. In other places, they just stop counting for 3 or 4 hours. And then all of a sudden, postal trucks show up with a bunch of ballots. So the issue is, the reason why they put in the law in Pennsylvania that you have to properly date the ballot for the ballot to be counted is it's a mechanism to catch fraudulent ballots. So, for example, if instead you have people sign ballots but don't date them, or you decide to fill them out on their behalf for them, the one way it would get caught if there's a mismatch on the dates, but basically you sit on a bunch of bogus ballots. You wait until election night to see whether or not they're useful. And that's where the margin of fraud comes in. And if you see, oh, it's close, how many do we need? We need about 75,000. Okay, boom, they just magically show up. If you look at what was happening, a whole bunch of ballots magically showed up on election night in Pennsylvania. And so so if the only thing that matters is the postmark date, you've just given all the power to the post office. So you have to hope that there's no corrupt official at the post office that's going to postmark ballots the wrong postmark, right? That's why you have the internal check that the postmark employee can't know about inside the ballot. So the two have to correspond, or boom, the ballot's gone. It's again a check on fraud. You don't have that if the postmark person isn't reliable or trustworthy. And again, the union that represents the postal workers has endorsed Kamala Harris for president and has referred to Trump as an imminent risk to their economic futures, to their personal futures. So you have people who are incentivized to engage in election fraud, election fornication, called fortification, there at Time Magazine and elsewhere in 2020, who admitted to many of these scams and schemes, just in more polite diplomatic language. And so the issue that was before the Commonwealth Court was a bunch of these ways of catching fraud, deterring fraud. It's not about little hyper technicalities meant to disfranchise people. That's a bunch of hogwash. That's gaslighting by people like Garrett Archer, who's just flat lying to people because he doesn't want to. I'll give him credit for this. Forever, this guy has pretended to be nonpartisan. He's affiliated with Arizona election officials. It's obvious to anybody that has watched his Twitter feed over time, that he's a partisan political Democratic hack. The mask has dropped over the past week because he's gone nuts over the Haitian cats. That he's decided that, he's to gaslight everybody about that. Oh, that can't be possibly happening, and this is a big conspiracy theory, and he's an election fraud denier, is what he is. They like to call the people election deniers. People like Garrett Archer are election fraud deniers. They live in a fantasy land that doesn't exist in the reality, and want us all to join it. But so these are the reasons why the legislatures passed these rules. Wasn't let's find out creative ways to disfranchise people. I mean, many of these were passed with Democratic support. They were passed because they were compromised of, okay, we can deter this kind of fraud this way, we can deter this kind of fraud this way, and so forth. And so the Commonwealth Court has been slowly eviscerating a lot of those standards over the last several weeks. They just lost a big one because the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said the Commonwealth Court never had authority to even rule on the matter in the first place. So those rules are going to go back in place. But that hasn't stopped from them having to file more suits in more places, including in Illinois and including in North Carolina.
Okay, and is that moving into the North Carolina one?
Yeah. So, have you seen that?
Robert, I not that I tuned out, but I'm not up to speed on these.
So, in North Carolina, you have to have a real photo ID to register to vote. Real photo ID. The goal, but that photo ID can be your University of North Carolina photo ID. That's fine.
Oh, that's right. This is the digital photo ID that they want to allow them to show. All right, so this one I read, and I'm sort of steel manning. For those of you, the law requires you to show photo ID, which is already a step in the right direction.
Not all states do.
Not all states.
North Carolina does.
And this one would allow a digital ID as a replacement for what the law provided for by way of ID. I understand the legal argument that the law clearly says what types of IDs are okay, and it didn't say digital ID, and so that's not good. But then the judgment came down and said, yeah, digital IDs are just fine. But what is the risk of a digital ID?
Oh, it's very simple. It may not be you. So you can flood. The key is, if you want to do election fortification in the Democrats' language, is you need people on the voter rolls whose ballots you control, and then you need control of their ballots. Stage 2 is mass mail-in voting. Mass mail-in voting allows you to get control of their ballots. It interrupts the chain of custody of the ballot. You don't have to have a person actually show up at a precinct and actually vote. You can get it through the mail. But the first part is you need them on the voter rolls to begin with. Because there's only so many people that are already on the voter rolls whose ballots you can help make sure vote the right way. And so let's say you want to flood the rolls, and you want to call them students at certain universities. Now, if you track this information, you'll know that most students at most universities do not register to vote. So you can register on their behalf, but if you have to use a physical ID, that's going to be a problem. Digital ID, not such a problem. So the reason the law requires a physical ID, again, is not disfranchisement, because almost any kind of physical ID works, including the university card. So the Garrett Archers of the world are just gaslighting and lying to people about this. Everybody has this mechanism of ID. It can be a general state ID. It doesn't even have to be a driver's license. It can be a U.S. passport. It can be all these things. But it has to be a physical ID to make sure it's you, to make sure somebody else isn't registering on your behalf, so they can get control and custody of your ballot and put in a fraudulent ballot. That's why this law exists, and that's why the Democrats in North Carolina are trying to weasel their way around it. And the courts, more often than not, are being complicit, sadly.
All right, I'm just looking now. The Trump apparently Trump tweet out a 0 for 2, and I'm not sure that I.
Well, then you get to Illinois. How is it happening? Takes us back to the beginning. In Illinois, a bunch of voter groups got together, filed suit, alleging what has often been the grounds to challenge redistricting to challenge the whether or not you can apportion your state legislature, for example, by factoring in region. Like, could you do the U.S. Electoral College at the state level and protect rural communities? Supreme Court said no in the 1950s. Well, how did they even have jurisdiction to decide the case? Oh, you can bring a claim for voter dilution or voter discrimination. So, okay, if that's the rules, a bunch of folks in Illinois filed suit because they're trying to liberalize the mail-in ballot process in Illinois. There's going to be House seats that matter in Illinois. So, for controlling the House, in order to allow massive election fraud. And if you don't believe me, go back and read the New York Times, August 2012, when they thought the Republicans were going to do it. The Obama camp did. And you can read all the experts that the New York Times got saying there's no bigger risk of election fraud than mail-in balloting. So that's what. What doctrine do you think the federal court relied on to suddenly say you can't bring a voter dilution claim now? That's reserved for those politically correct cases.
I'm going to say latches.
Oh, no. That will be saved for later when they sue later. Instead, because some candidates sued, right? So clearly they have standing. They're going to have to spend money out of pocket to deal with this problem. And what did they say? The court said, no standing. Now, later on, when they challenge it at the election stage, what will these same judges do? Latches. You should have sued sooner. That's what utter frauds so much of our state and federal judiciary has become on issues of election integrity.
Well, you're blackpilling everybody, but what does everyone have to do, Robert? I mean, what's the solution? Is either pressuring your local government to enact proper legislation? I mean, if you can't rely on the courts, what is the solution to this?
Well, in some cases, it's get out and vote, organize the vote. They can't steal your vote if you show up to vote. I mean, a lot of people don't realize they don't go to vote. Somebody's going to vote for them without them knowing it. So, get your buddies, your pals, your friends, everybody else to the voter polls to vote.
What about
that by itself will make it, because the reality is the margin of fraud is somewhere between 0.5% to 3%, depending on where you put the experts think. From my study of American politics, it's usually less than 1%. That what happens is they're sitting on just enough bogus ballots to make a difference if it's close. If it's not close, they don't even submit the bogus ballots. Now, here, every jurisdiction matters. Every county that has a clean election will expose another county that doesn't. Every state that has a clean election will expose every state that doesn't. And that's why it matters at every level of government. People can participate also in the poll watching process, election observation process. They can participate in finding creative ways to try to challenge these laws where and when they can, either with legislative bodies, executive bodies, or judicial officials. And just because you run into a lot of hurdles because they want to make it difficult is no excuse to just quit. No better example of that than the people that fought the feds on the right to bet on elections.
Well, before we get there, to swamp the ballot by way of mail-in voting, early voting, is that a potential?
Too big to rig. That's the best answer by far. The best answer is too big to rig. And don't listen to anybody that says there's no such thing, because those are people who are trying to gaslight you into being depressed, going home, and quitting so they can steal it easier. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing people he doesn't exist. But an even greater trick that the elites pulled is convincing you that you cannot resist. That's what these messages are supposed to be. When these corrupt judges try to shut you down, try to silence you, try to undermine you, try to sabotage you, that's even more reason to fight back, not a reason to go hide in the hills.
Robert, let me take 1 minute to listen to this wonderful thing. This is prior to the assassination attempt, but I want to hear what we can agree it was assassination attempt.
Do you really want to be inside Jen Psaki?
Dude, there's so many jokes. I don't know how she thought of that name and then stuck with it, but yeah, let's go inside Jen Psaki. Listen to this here.
My heart breaks that this election is close, because this comes down to just some basic norms and principles of what we should see in leadership for the greatest country in the world. And it doesn't look like this. Yes, Springfield
there's George
is going
Conway.
through hell, but they're going through hell because the guy that says that he wants to be the commander in chief is actually bringing that hell to their footsteps. He decided to amplify a lie on a national debate stage, and that is harming American citizens. That is a problem. When
American
I talk
citizens.
about MAGA, I talk about the fact that when we swore in finally in January, that we swore to defend against those that are coming against us, whether they are domestic or international. And right now, I feel
enemies.
like MAGA in general,
Domestic enemies.
they are threats to us domestically. And we see
was
it
an hour
time and time
before
again.
it was posted.
And I think that's why you see so many national leaders, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, coming together to say there is only one person qualified to be the commander in chief, and that is Kamala Harris.
No question.
Oh my goodness. It's such bile-inducing rubbish from that nut job. Yep, no, he's bringing hell to their doorsteps. This was published at 12:30, and then 1 hour later, someone was, some alleged apparent Ukrainian supporting nutbag who watches CNN and PBS. Okay, the betting markets. I'd never heard of this platform, but so who goes after them? It's the Federal Trade Commission goes after
the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission in this case.
Okay, so they go after what is basically betting on political outcomes, and they call it they qualify it as gaming and gambling, where I forget it was called, it had a K in it, the name of the company, Kaloshi or something.
Kalshi, I think it is.
Kalshi. So Kalshi says we're not gaming or gambling. We are allowing people to speak and basically let us know where they think the political outcomes are going to go by using their money, and it's neither gambling nor illegal. And they ended up being who found that they were right in their qualification, that the rule that whatever the FTC, the I forget the acronym, it's a 5-letter acronym, the rule that they deemed them to be gambling or illegal conduct was capricious, willy-nilly, violated the APA, and that I don't know if this opens up the markets in America to political investments in the future, political futures, but it's certainly a good decision. I know you love it. Tell us more about it.
So the first question people should ask themselves is, why is the Biden administration harassing everybody that was even, educational intended organizations like those that sponsor Predicted into taking down political betting markets? Why are they threatening Polymarket so that Polymarket's official policy is to not take money from U.S. customers? Nothing illegal about it, but they coerce them into doing that with intimidating threats. They've drastically limited the markets on Predicted, as Predicted has had to be in extended litigation. In this case, Kalshi, that does prediction markets of all kinds on a wide range of topics and subjects, in order to improve our understanding of those topics and subjects in particular, this has been an area of academic inquiry for some time, was threatened by the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission. And you have to ask, what does Commodities and Futures Trading Commission have to do with prediction markets? Well, they were taking the position. Well, the first thing is, why is there any political motivation by the Biden administration to do this? It's very simple. If you follow political betting markets, they can impact the public narrative. It's people putting money where their mouth is. And if you see a disparity and a discrepancy between the political betting markets and the official media narrative, which has sporadically popped up, it can expose the big fat fraud the government's trying to push down your throat. And that I think that is precisely why the Biden administration became obsessed with suppressing and shutting them all down. They didn't want there to be a constant, continuous, daily check that said, by the way, the narrative you're getting from the New York Times, the narrative you're getting from ABC, the narrative you're getting from the officials in power is a big lie. They didn't want that out there. So they decided to come up with this novel theory that it's a futures contract, that betting on a political election outcome is really a futures contract, number one, so that the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission could govern it. That secondly, that they could write rules about these things in ways that appear to exceed their authority from the get-go. We'll get to the FTC doing the same thing in non-compete arrangement circumstances, which was something, by the way, we predicted about a year ago in the context of the Steven Crowder case. And then The third part was to say that they were unlawful gaming. So they could only regulate these contracts as futures, even if you were to consider them futures contracts. But they could prohibit them if they're unlawful or gaming contracts. And the problem is nothing about them is unlawful under state law because they're not gaming. As in fact, the judge went through, and Kalshi, to their credit, didn't just lay down and take it. They challenged it. They said this is nonsense. Fought it all the way through to the summary judgment stage, and exposed the absurdity of their claims. This goes back to the old fantasy football debates where they were trying to ban fantasy football in some states by calling it illegal gambling. The gambling by law, the legal definition of gambling, the common sense definition of true gambling, is that it's a game of risk, that it's a pure game of chance, that you have that. Here's the way I'd put it. If political betting was gambling, retards like Nate Silver would be as successful as me. They're not, because it's not a game of risk, of just random chance. Skill can make a difference. It's the difference between poker and video poker. You know, it's the difference between sports betting and slot machines. One of them people can consistently win at. One of them nobody can. Why? Because one of them is random chance, and one of them your skill, your ability to interpret it can make a difference. But the big key the judge realized, he goes, you guys are defining anything. They try to so broadly expand the definition of gaming so that it covered any event contingent contract. And the judge is like, you're saying that you could ban any of these? Do you realize this would ban pretty much 80% of the stock market? Like, I mean, like, it's like, have you thought this through at all? And it's like, no, don't worry, we'll be hypocritical and selective. So the judge correctly ruled that's nonsense. The CFTC has no such power. There's nothing unlawful about political prediction markets. There's nothing gaming about political prediction markets.
And just so people appreciate, like, the difference between gaming and market predictions are that one is, in theory, purely random. I'm saying in theory in that I think the House fixes these, you know, the odds so that it's not purely random, but purely random, rolling a dice, versus educated guesses based on short selling stocks, for example, or predicting political outcomes.
Or predicting stock market trends. I mean, all derivatives are event contingent contracts. But they're usually based on informed information. A more skilled individual can consistently make money. I mean, the way I always described it is that if somebody can consistently make money at it, it ain't gambling. Real gambling is something nobody can consistently make money at in a predictable manner beyond simple random luck. And so it's a big ruling. And what does it mean? It means everybody can open up political betting contracts anywhere in the country. That's what it means. It means PredictIt can dramatically expand. It means Polymarket could legally operate. Kalshi has already said they're going to start opening up markets ASAP. So the political and so now I like it. I enjoy it. I've made a lot of money over it, quite famously over the years on it. At Sports Picks, I give out free picks to other people. For the last year, political bets have been cashing left and right, going back to shorting DeSantis and betting Trump all the way back in 2023. But it's beyond that. The political impact of this legal decision is it provides real market information that can contest the institutional narrative. And the more people that are involved in the marketplace, the more legal it becomes, the more accessible it becomes, the less able the system is to lie and deceive people about it. And that's why the Biden administration wanted to shut it down. And that's why it's a big white pill that they failed.
I'm looking actually at the markets now that you mentioned it. Trump has come down a little bit in the markets. It drives me a little bit nuts, but we'll see.
There's some fake money in there. But see, that fake money can only impact things as long as the ordinary person can't gamble on it. Like, I knew, for example, Brexit was going to pass because of who was betting on it in the betting markets in the UK. Your ordinary working class population was betting with their actual money by massive 4-1, 5-1 margins that Brexit was going to succeed. On election night, you could have bet Brexit at 10-1 to pass. 10-1. Cha-ching. That was a very nice night. But what does that tell you? It's a way of measuring real activity in the community, what somebody really thinks, beyond the bogus fake polls and the bogus fake news. That's the idea of prediction markets in general. This is why the Biden administration doesn't want it available and accessible to people. But right now, while it's still, in this gray space for operators, not gray space for you to place the bet, but a gray space, the people accepting it don't want to officially accept it while the Biden administration is harassing them. That limits the scope of it. What does that do? It allows some bad faith actors playing around with some CIA black budget money to occasionally manipulate those markets to make it look it's going a certain way that it really isn't.
Mm-hmm. Robert, let me bring up a bunch of these chats because I saw one from our Biltong regular viewer. Karentov says, in Canada, I have friends who have slept with the ballot boxes next to them to protect the integrity of the elections. The Sisyphean Journal. Is it actually possible to be too big to rig if it's past beyond 3 to 5%? I guess if I'm following your logic, Robert. Itsy Bitsy Spider, what percentage of illegal aliens will Trump be able to remove from the United States? Clearly, a decoy says it's a in-kind donation available to ultra-rich, so that in-kind donations available to ultra-rich so they wouldn't need to spend money if we're banned. I'm trying to understand that, but clearly a decoy, shadowy donation for Barnes. Okay, I think I get it now. We've got Rivka the Jade Gamer. Without CE, what was CE? Any podcaster who speaks in favor of a candidate could be prosecuted for non-financial contribution to the campaign. And then King of Biltong, $100 says, we have the elk and venison biltong back in stock and shipments will commence starting tomorrow. Need some lean game protein? Get yours at biltongusa.com. Viva 10 for 10% off. Barnes, do you want some biltong?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think, you could have a slow, maybe target the certain migrant populations. Eat this, not cats.
Pinochet's helicopter tours. I'm in Massachusetts. I label all of the Democrat properties as gun-free homes where illegal immigrants are welcome to defense. Welcome, so the self-defense won't be used. All the way, Sad Wings Raging. Best, most informative show on the internet right here. Sad Wings Raging. Thank you. And we'll get to the Rumble, to the locals when we get our locals after party. Okay, so now we got the FTC. So we've gone from the whatever the 5 acronym to the FTC, and they're having struck down their prohibition on non-compete clauses. I don't understand where they.
Remember, we predicted, by the way.
Yes,
but people that those hacks at the Daily Beast and some other people were coming after us saying, "Oh no, you don't understand that Steven Crowder's non-compete is definitely illegal. It violates the FTC rules and da 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 da." And our first response was that kind of sounds illegal for the FTC to claim that authority. Well, we found out this week whether we were right or not.
Yeah, they're contemplating appealing the decision, but the bottom line, FTC, I don't even know how they come down and issue a dictate that non-competes are blanket across the board unlawful, and like no limitations, no criteria, no restrictions in terms of like the prohibition, blanket. Judge comes down and says this was overexpanding, whatever, and the prohibition on non-competes is itself struck down. FTC is deciding whether or not to appeal. Where the hell did they even get the idea that they had the authority to issue basically what's what I'm looking for, like an industry-wide prohibition on non-competes, which have a very, very specific function, a useful function, a lawful function when done within the limits of standard non-competes.
Well, that's where it re-emphasizes the importance of what Steve Bannon has talked about, Vivek Ramaswamy has talked about, and Elon Musk has talked about, which was we need to defund, we need to destructure, deconstruct, we need to destroy the administrative state. That's, by the way, that part of Project 2025 is what got so many of the Washington insiders all rattled. It wasn't the generic list of conservative think tank agenda items that has been on the agenda for 40 years. It was the Paul Dans part of it that said, hey, we need to start taking apart the administrative state. And Paul Dans is precisely right. He was on Tim Pool recently. Great guy, good guy, all the way across the board. So if you look at now, personally, I strongly oppose most non-competes. I'm not a fan. I think they often violate variations of monopoly laws, etc. At the same time, though I liked the policy, I disagree that the FTC had any prerogative, any province, any power to issue such a policy. Because what's happening is these bureaucratic agencies are finding all kinds of loopholes to massively grab power over the American population, whether they're using the strings of federal funds or using the loosest language in some law, like the ATF has been doing. I mean, that's how the CDC decided they could become the world's landlord overnight. And that's how we've seen example after example after example out of this. And this was just the latest abuse. And we said at the time, this didn't make sense. This really wasn't within FTC's prerogative. The Federal Trade Commission is there to help enforce certain rules of fair competition and prevent deception, but they're mostly there to take certain action against individual rogue actors. They are not a substitute legislature. They are also not a substitute executive, because one of the problems is the FTC is too independent of the elected executive branch, which allows them to be part of the permanent bureaucratic class, the permanent administrative state. The words deep state originate from the construct of the dual state being you have this unelected government that continues to govern what we do, regardless of what the people actually want in a so-called democratic government. When you hear Democrats say our democracy is under threat, they mean their democracy, not actual democracy. They're opposed to actual democracy. They don't think you should have the right to speak. If it's dissident opinion, you shouldn't have the right to vote. Heck, you should be in jail and bankrupted if you have the politically incorrect opinion. They mean their control of the government. They mean the professional, managerial, bureaucratic class and their monopoly over the administrative state. That's what they mean by democracy. It means the exact opposite of actual democracy, of voter and control and citizen control. And so this was just the latest illustration of it. And so the challenge was, hey, judge, but first of all, they don't have authority under the statute to do so, and thus it's arbitrary and capricious under the Administrative Procedures Act. Second, they're independent of the executive. They're acting independent of the legislative branch. That would make it an unconstitutional delegation of legislative authority on a major question that has broad impact on the economy. Legislature didn't give them that authority. That violates Article 1 of the United States Constitution. Next, it violates Article 2 of the Constitution because they're independent of the elected executive branch, and that makes them another step removed from the control of the people and the populace. And last but not least, they didn't even meaningfully consider the evidence. They didn't meaningfully review criticism, because this is how the administrative state acts now. The Administrative Procedures Act was intended to make them go through an adversarial, little d, democratizing process of listening and addressing dissent. Instead, the administrative state has been refusing for decades to do so, and it's got most egregious under the Biden administration. So the importance of this decision is not so much on non-competes as it is starting to hem in and enforce the limitations the Supreme Court has been passing over the last several years on the administrative state, and reinforcing the need for what Elon Musk is talking about. Let's defund the administrative state. For what Vivek is talking about, let's deconstruct the administrative state. And what wrongfully imprisoned Steve Bannon is talking about, let's destroy the administrative state.
And speaking of Steve Bannon, actually, in our locals community, Will Rogers, $10 tip, says, Viva, please watch this interview. And it is, I'll have to watch it afterwards, but it's Marley Hornick on Bannon's War Room. Well, Bannon is taking a hiatus in jail.
He's made another bail request. He should be granted release in the middle of an election for this bogus case while his appeal is pending for the Supreme Court of the United States. But unfortunately, it just shows you the reach. If you want to interpret, understand Kamala Harris, simply listen to her craziest allegations and assume she's talking about herself. And if you do, it's an extraordinary confession. And one of them is, I'm going to lock up people and have been locking up people who disagree with me. She'll say Trump rather than the word I. Just substitute I for Trump, and you get an extraordinary confession from Kamala Harris. Maybe somebody could do a video of that. That'd be great. Like just substituting, take out when she says Trump and make it I, and boom, it's like, wow, one confession, another confession, another confession.
I'm going to read a bunch of the tipped questions here. We got $1. Cliff Norman, $1 gave an article, a link to a Goldwater. Who is it? Barry Goldwater interview. Grammy Kins says, locals keeps dropping my tip back to $1, so I'll do it until I get to 5. Grammykins, thank you very much. Grammykins says, I cannot support the idea of having that snotty, middle-aged mean girl with daddy issues installed in the White House. We got $5 from Sandy Paws, says, regarding voting, is If someone else, regarding voting, so someone else doesn't vote for you, how are things handled if there are 2 ballots submitted in your name, one from you and one from someone else? Robert, what happens there?
Sometimes they catch it and do something about it. Sometimes they don't. One of the issues in 2020 was that this kept popping up. But see, here's the thing. The ordinary voter never knows that somebody else voted in their name. It requires the counting and canvassing of the ballots to correctly monitor that. One of the reasons they want liberalized standards for counting and canvassing, in other words, not strictly enforced. One of the reasons they don't want IDs connected to people or have it as loose as possible or disconnect. Let's say someone is registered to vote under their driver's license, but you go and you take their digital ID and register for them under their digital ID. Now, will it caught that the same person voted? Same name. That doesn't trigger anything. See, that's part of the scam that they're doing. They're trying to pad the voter rolls so they can pad the ballot box. And it's very hard to find that out, is the short answer.
All right, we got Spam Ranger, $5 says, in California during 2021 recall election of Gavin Newsom, when the U.S. Postal Service did was preferential delivery of ballots in Democrat versus Republican dominant districts. We moved to Republican districts shortly before the election, and the USPS lost our ballots. I called the county, and the election official I spoke with said that other people called with similar problems. Will Rogers says the United Sovereign Americans, USA, has filed federal civil rights lawsuit, writ of mandamus, in 9 states, demanding the states follow the Constitution, federal state laws in the 2024 future elections. These suits give the USA and plaintiffs standing if these states attempt to certify invalid elections again in 2024. Viva, you must interview Marley Hornick. Okay, and I got that link later on. Will do. I'm way behind you. I started late, so if this was answered already, ignore it. Isn't Florida FBI office sympathetic to Trump? I thought they were the ones who recommended against the raid. If they are, wouldn't they work to actually figure this out? I think we did cover that, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, and what happens in these cases is often not handled by the local people. It'll be handled by people in D.C. You can't trust anybody in the FBI. Just being blunt about it, reflexively. Good people, they are purging and clearing out. I mean, that will relate to our vaccine mandate discrimination case because of which office it relates to.
I'm going to take a guess. Is it? Well, I'll get there. Let me do one, Robert, because this is it.
Remember, it's the most corrupt state in the country at the moment.
I'm going with SDNY.
Oh, no, most corrupt state.
Oh, I'm sorry, DC. Well, what is it? DC's a district, so corrupt state. Pennsylvania. For goodness sake, Robert. Oh, and speaking of Pennsylvania, by the way, this is Sheila Ina. By the way, Viva, it's due to your vlog the other day when you received Miller's Farms order that gave me the push to go ahead and place my order yesterday. Thank you for this, and thank you, Barnes, for bringing the Mr. Miller products to my attention. Have had no luck sourcing a local farmer, would rather patronize Amos anyway. Robert, I am now drinking raw water buffalo milk, and it's
isn't that good?
Delicious. Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's delicious.
It's like gives you a jolt to the brain. AmosMillerOrganicFarm.com. AmosMillerOrganicFarm.com. Well, you can still get it. Government's going to try to shut them down here in a couple of weeks.
All right, what's the update with Pennsylvania?
So this is a vaccine mandate discrimination case. The district attorney of Philadelphia, who's a bit of a nut job, one of the things he came in and did was force all his district attorneys to be vaccinated. Several of them objected on religious grounds. So he completely prohibited any religious accommodation request. You couldn't even make a religious accommodation request. Now, that should by itself be seen as discriminatory due to bad decisions out of the First, Second, and Third Circuit Court of Appeals that the Supreme Court has took a snooze on. Those complete prohibitions of any religious accommodation at all have been green-lit by federal courts throughout the Northeast. He got away with that. What's striking to me is how little news coverage there was of this. Here you have the public official, Philadelphia DA, refusing to allow religious conscientious objection to being forced to have a vaccine as a condition of employment. The other reason, of course, they were doing this, same reason they did it to the military, same reason they did it to the high-ranking government officials. The goal was to purge all dissidents, purge all independent thought. So, for example, you put a vaccine mandate on the FBI, you get rid of the people who think independently. The people who don't take it, oh, okay, you're one of those people. as a doctor in Philadelphia, wanted to chop my foot off, understood that when I was objecting, said I have issues with this, that's not going to happen. I'm getting out of here. And the next question the doctor asked was, are you COVID vaccinated? Like that had anything to do with whether they want to chop my foot off? And I was like, no. Now we both know each other. Let's move along here. That's their goal here. That's part of they wanted to get rid of in the military anybody who would independently think. I call it the Snowden problem. They want no Ed Snowdens working for them. So while this is religiously discriminatory and offensive that the government thinks they can own your body, I mean, the ability of one thing Trump did miss out on, when Kamala Harris is sitting there talking about, I believe a woman owns her body. I mean, Trump should have immediately come back with, unless you make them take the vaccine and their religion says they object to it, then you say, no, you don't own your body. Nobody owns their body. You threw out a bunch of hardworking military members, weakening our military because you decided they had to take a vaccine. That was it. Also celebrating his Kennedy alignment and Gabbard endorsements. Those were his the two biggest misses for Trump from the debate. But here you had the Philadelphia DA doing it, and the Philadelphia press is snoozing as usual rather than covering this. So a young DA filed suit and challenged it. And what the court said is there's a bunch of evidence of religious discriminatory animus here. That the reason they said, look, you can, I disagree with this interpretation. They interpreted that you could not allow any religious exceptions in theory. But if the reason you do so is because you hate religious people or certain religious people, then no, you can't. And this is where religious discrimination can relate to non-religious discrimination. I'm litigating this in a bunch of cases. 3M, which otherwise stands for 3MFers, is a company that has harassed, harangued, and hurt their employees. Nasty company involved in a lot of fraud, other criminal activity, hasn't been fully exposed and caught on it over the years, is trying to say that the fact they treat people differently based on whether it was a religious accommodation request or medical accommodation request is irrelevant. The courts have said just the opposite. We'll be litigating it there. But the good part of this ruling was the Third Circuit saying there's plenty of evidence of religiously discriminatory animus by the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. And so her case is going to go get the chance to go through discovery and get to trial past summary judgment. And maybe we'll find out the whole truth about just how biased and corrupt the Philly DA is.
Give me 2 seconds here. I'm multitasking, trying to keep up with the news here. Okay, fantastic. Do we? Well, I mean,
you got another case of Christians getting fired by the public school system.
Did I? I think I was distracted by the
the woke theater case. If that rings a bell.
Oh, the woke theater. The guy writing so they're doing a play called. It had to do with someone who allegedly got killed for being gay in a state. I forget what the name of the play was called. And a Christian teacher expressed some discontent at the selection of the play. Said, if I can add a Christian perspective to this, I'd love to. And then was promptly fired after being told it was put on administrative leave. Said there's nothing wrong with the email exchanges you got into, and was promptly fired afterwards, quite clearly as reprisal for this. It's driving me crazy. I'm gonna have to go find the name of the play. What the hell is the name of the play? But anyway,
named after the kid that what it first shows is all the different ways our educational institutions have become means of indoctrination. And it includes everything to the point of the theater and the plays that are being picked for the kids to participate in, the kids to attend, etc. And here you have a Christian teacher who didn't object to the play, who just wanted to contribute a Christian perspective to the discussion about the play. And because of it, he's so enraged, all the indoctrinators at our public schools, that they conspired to have him fired. After he's fired, he files suit on multiple grounds. One part of his suit saved him, which was his Title VII claim. One part, what I disagree with the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals on, I think it was the 10th Circuit, which basically found that it was okay to fire him for free speech purposes because his speech was as part of his official duties. It's like, okay, he's a parent of a kid that attends the school. He's involved in a bunch of activities. How did this necessarily relate to his duties? For those that don't know, if you work for a government employer, they can't discriminate against you based on your private speech. They can if they can pretend you weren't speaking in your capacity as an individual. If you were simply representing as an agent of your employer, in this case, the government can control its own speech. And so it can punish you for having a dissident opinion, if it's their speech that you are representing. So the key is whether it's not part of your official duties. And it's always fascinating to me when they find something as part of your official duties and when they don't. It tends to be when they want to cover up for the government is the only consistency. They want to cover up for the government, part of your official duties. If it hurts the government, magically not part of your official duties. So they decided that his email was part of his official duties. Why does that matter? That means you have no First Amendment claim. Your First Amendment retaliation claim gets tossed. So for everybody out there who works for government, remember that. If you want to make a statement that you think might cause you trouble, make sure you do it in such a way that it cannot be described as part of your official duties. FYI. In that same, this is, for example, by contrast, if you're like a senator, corrupt senator like Elizabeth Warren, you use your official Senate account to lie and libel the Covington kids rather than your individual account. So you can say, oh, I did this as part of my senatorial duties, and you're magically excused. But if you're President Trump and you point out that there's a nut job lying about you, all of a sudden no immunity attaches because that couldn't possibly be part of your official duties. I mean, the hypocrisy is just off the charts in these cases. But what it also shows is now Title VII, because local school districts are usually subject to Title VII as well, and other laws that can apply, usually other state laws, prohibit discrimination based on religion. So that's what saved his claim, and his ability to go forward was be able to producing evidence and plausible allegations that in fact religion was the animus and the motivation for his firing. But it should tell you just how bad our public school systems are. Some of these are happening in conservative states. Conservative states, the local school is run by a bunch of quasi-commies. And they're getting away with it because they often have friends and allies in the professional managerial class at the level of executive bureaucracy and the state and federal judiciary. And it should be disturbing to people that a case like this can even exist. A very modest, moderate comment made in a conservative area gets a man fired because you're not allowed to have any different or dissonant views.
Well, especially since they said there was nothing wrong with it, and even when he was put on administrative leave, they said you're fine, you're good, and then a few days later fired.
Yeah.
Robert, I'm gonna put together a bunch of stuff that we're gonna have to catch up on the news in a second. What do we have? We're gonna stay live a little longer if we can here. What do we have? Oh, hold on. Sorry.
Oh, we got woke mandates, which is a natural bridge from the woke school system.
Now let me think if I'm gonna need some trigger words.
Colorado licensing conversion therapy.
Oh my goodness! Oh yes. Of course, this is what we're going through in Canada now because they literally ban conversion therapy, but only one way of conversion therapy. So psychiatrists can't treat. This case involves a Christian-oriented.
You can't. You basically can't treat gender dysphoria.
Yeah,
unless your way of treating it is to celebrate it.
Well, exactly like what we have up in Canada, where the Conservatives with the Liberals unanimously passed the conversion therapy ban. But all it does is say you can't talk a gay adult, in this case, or a gay kid out of being gay, but you sure as hell can talk a trans kid into doing the surgeries. And this was a Christian-oriented psychologist or psychiatrist basically saying, you're criminalizing my speech. I screen grabbed a part of it because it was so preposterous how they worked around this. They basically said, you're criminalizing therapy. I get adults who are Christian-oriented adults who want to, work through these temptations or these feelings if they have, and I can't offer them therapy. And the court basically said, no, you can discuss things, but you can discuss the issues, but you can't advise on it in terms of talking them out of being gay. But you sure as hell can talk everyone into being trans and whatever. It's a wild thing. This is out of Colorado. I don't know when Colorado went this far off the deep end. But the bottom line is they are basically making any form of therapy criminalized to the point where now, like Jordan Peterson has been saying up in Canada, you can't even do your job without breaking the law.
In the 10th Circus, which would be the better way to describe the so-called 10th Circuit, is enforcing it. So a therapist sued saying this is clearly trying to constrict my speech. And the 10th Circuit said, no, no, no. This is just trying to control your conduct, not your speech. Their whole goal is to use licensing powers to dictate what you can say and what you can do, and to pretend that a law that governs your speech only governs your conduct, even though the conduct at issue is, oh yeah, speech. So the 10th Circuit greenlit this Colorado law. And basically what it is, it says, I mean, it's real specific. It'd be one thing if they said we don't want people in the family therapy business to be involved in gender dysphoria discussions. But that isn't what they did. They said, as long as you're celebrating gender dysphoria, as long as you're celebrating people who think they're men who think they're women and women who think they're men, as long as you're celebrating people who have same-sex attraction or any other kind of attraction, that's going to go further. It's only a matter of time. Is fine. That's totally cool. But you can lose your license and be fined without a trial by jury if you disagree with that. If you give them any advice, you give them any referral, you give them any book or any text, which just 5 years ago was commonplace even within the psychology profession, which has always been a left-leaning profession. You can go back and look at DSM-4 and DSM-4, and what do you find? You find gender dysphoria defined and appropriate mechanisms and modes of treatment. You're now prohibited from doing that in Colorado. You cannot follow the DSM-4, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual or whatever it's called, which is like the Bible of psychology. You can't even follow it because they are dictating under standard of care guidelines using licensure and credentialing power to control speech and punish dissidents. And the fact that this is a case the Supreme Court should take because it's complete garbage, that the conduct exception to speech is nonsense. There's actual conduct and then there's speech. When the conduct is speech, it's speech. Conduct is something that's by definition not speech. And the Orwellian gamesmanship by the 10th Circus is an ongoing disgrace to our legal system.
We'll deal with all of the updates when we get back to that in a second. For now, do we go to the Panamanian? Well, just because I scrolled through the Panamanian guy, the president who was extradited to Panama, and then they ended up charging him with crimes that were not listed on the extradition papers, and then he petitioned the court out in Florida to have the letter for extradition revoked, and I don't understand what the hell good that would do once he's already back in Panama. So this is the former president of Panama. He fled Panama, or at least I think he fled or was living in Florida, and he was indicted in Panama on, what was it? I think they ultimately went after money laundering, but a bunch of other crimes that he was indicted on. He was extradited on the basis of the charges against him in Panama. Gets to Panama, he goes through one trial, a second trial, he gets acquitted both times around, and then gets charged with other crimes for which he was not listed on the indictment to be extradited. And he then petitioned a Florida court to, to revoke the letter of extradition. The technicalities on this, I'm not sure I understood, nor do I understand what good it's possibly going to do when he's still in Panama to have his extradition letter or recognition in America annulled, but flesh that out.
So it's another problem of who it gets to enforce our treaty laws. So the way an extradition treaty works is the extradition treaty sets the terms by which one government arrests a person and sends them to another government for the purposes of criminal prosecution and punishment. And the extradition treaty sets out, here's how we're going to do that. And here's the limits and restraints and restrictions and process and substance that applies. One of the universal ones that's part of international law in terms of custom and practice in these treaties and enforcement and interpretation for centuries is the rule of specialty or speciality, which means that you can only be extradited for the crime you can only be prosecuted for the crime that you're extradited for. So the concern is that a government would say, hey, we got a murderer in your jurisdiction. Please send him to us. And so that you send him to them, and then they drop the murder charges and charge him with some political dissident crime. Right? They don't want that to happen. The extradition treaty doesn't allow that to happen. And if the extradition treaties are going to be enforced, you have to enforce that. So here you have a former president of Panama comes to the United States. For some reason, he gets on the wrong side of somebody powerful, both in Panama and the United States. Bolsonaro should keep this in mind, by the way, as to where he's going to be. Some other people think they're going to be protected by the United States. They run afoul of the United States for some reason, and suddenly they're subject to criminal prosecution. They all think they're going to get the Batista treatment, who was an honest to God criminal. But Batista always kept his word with the deep state crowd, and so he was never criminally prosecuted for his many, 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 many crimes in Cuba. By contrast, others they'll betray at the drop of a hat when it's inconvenient. And that appears to have happened to this Panama president, former Panama president. Panama president goes back to Panama, gets acquitted of the charges he was extradited for. They goes up to the Panama higher court, and some of these courts you get to overturn verdicts. In America, you don't get to overturn a jury verdict on a criminal case, but Panama, you could. They go back, and the Panama court tries him a second time. He's acquitted again a second time. So something's wrong with these charges, and something's smelly about the whole process. But what does Panama decide to do? They decide, well, we're going to bring new charges, even though these were the charges that were never subject to the extradition. And an official in the U.S. Embassy green lights it. Problem is that violates the rule of speciality, the rule that requires you can only be prosecuted for the crimes you're extradited for. You could be prosecuted for crimes that happen after you get there, for new crimes you commit while there, but you can't be prosecuted for crimes before there, because the authority of the court over you is subject to the limitations of the extradition treaty and the basis by which you're extradited in the first place. And the only way to enforce that is to make sure you can't get extradited and then get prosecuted for something you never could get extradited for.
But the bottom line, though, if they want to do that, tough noogies, the only question is going to be what impact that has on future compliance with extradition requests.
Well, here's the big issue. Who gets to enforce it? So does the individual in a civil or criminal case get to enforce an extradition treaty principally designed for them? Or is an extradition treaty something solely for the convenience of the politicians in power? Who is the beneficiary of the extradition treaty? Who gets to enforce the extradition treaty? And this has been a recurrent question in U.S. law. And the Supreme Court for over a century has been coming up with new means and mechanisms to eviscerate the point and purpose of extradition treaties. They first did it when the U.S. government DEA went down and kidnapped a doctor they accused of being part of the DEA agent who got killed in Mexico. The real culprit was much closer to Washington, D.C., but they couldn't go barking up that tree. So they kidnapped him. He challenged it by saying, look, I was never extradited. The U.S. Supreme Court in a split decision said, nah, it's okay. We greenlit this for the Pinkertons back in the 1890s, said you can illegally kidnap someone and all the extradition rules don't apply, which kind of makes extradition kind of a crock, kind of a joke. It's either the exclusive means by which somebody can be transferred from one place to another or not. It's either the sole grounds of a court having jurisdiction over a person or not. But that was problem one. Now problem two is this guy sues because the reason why he sues is if he got a federal court to rule, a declaratory relief, that in fact this was an improper letter issued by the U.S. government, then under Panama domestic law, he's entitled to dismissal as a matter of law because it violated the speciality treaty because they have a specific enforcement provision in Panama law. But that Panama law enforcement provision depends upon the foreign government confirming it. And so that's why he sued for declaratory relief in the federal court. And what does the federal court decide? Nobody can ever enforce an extradition treaty unless the politicians say so. No standing to sue. Well, that's how preposterous the standing doctrine has become.
Well, I like the argument as to what is the utility. What are you going to do? Go extradite him back from Panama to come back to America so they can request extradition again? He's already in Panama. They're never
What would happen is those charges down there would have to be dismissed. He could then flee. He could then leave Panama, go wherever he wants, and they would have to go through the process of trying to re-indict him and request a new extradition. And here's the little dirty secret: if these charges were good enough to get extradition, they would have been included the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So in reality, they know they won't get a successful second extradition. So that's why it wouldn't be futile. But the key is, the bigger issue is, who gets to enforce extradition treaties? And courts are now expanding standing doctrine to such a degree, you can't enforce election integrity. You can't enforce the federal government not lying to you about vaccine safety. And now you can't enforce the treaties of the government unless the politicians say so. It's the judiciary absconding from its judicial obligation to affirm the Constitution and the treaties under the law of the land under Article 3.
Let me do two things here, by the way. I noticed someone said that the stream had cut for 2 minutes in between, and apparently it was for copyright violation or copyright claim. And was it the interview that the guy was giving? This is such a load of crap. What we're going to do, we're going to go over to Rumble and Locals, but before we do that, we are going to take this time while we have the YouTube audience and let them know about Rumble Premium. About Rumble Premium, boys. First of all, everyone start making your way over to Rumble, but make sure that you are subscribed and you have notifications turned on the CommieTube side of things. But this is a sponsorship from Rumble, one that is incredibly important and should help ensure the survival of the company. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they did, and that they caved to the pressure of the Biden administration. Rumble did not. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They are attacked by corporate media. They are attacked by governments like France, Russia, Brazil, China, maybe not China as well, but Brazil and France. They are attacked by governments basically kicked out of certain countries. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers alone because they have unlawful boycotts, as we've now seen. Watching our show on Rumble is one way that you can help. But if you can help it and you have the means, you can join Rumble Premium. It's $100 a year, but you get $10 off if you use promo code VIVA10 when you purchase the annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code VIVA10. Like I said, if you have the means, if you don't, just share, spread the word. Whenever I talk to people out there, I say, you guys know YouTube? Yeah. Do you know what Rumble is? And if they say yes, I know they're smarter than the average person. If they say no, I try to let them know about it. If you don't have the means, just watch, share, and thank you very much. Now, Robert, I think we have to, if you don't mind, we have to just get to some of the updates here. Potential updates. We don't know if they're true yet. There's always going to be the fog of war. But there are some interesting ones coming from people who I trust and know. And we got Mike Benz Cyber with a holy effing with an emoji of the... Oh, hold on a second. I forgot to do what I was going to do. Come on over to Rumble or vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We're ending on Twitter and YouTube. So let's just do that right now. I'm updating the stream.